Get started. My name is Dieta Moose, and my husband and I are kind of coordinators for the Faith and Freedom. And in this church here, we started a year ago now. We started inviting our leaders, our local leaders and such to come and speak with us so that we were able then to kind of get to know them and find out what their positions are and just kind of find out what's going on around here, right? And actually have some influence with them. So, and they've been kind enough to come and speak with us, and we've gotten to know them. And so now we have Mark Koran is coming to teach us about caucusing. And so again, we've had an attorney general candidate and also a secretary of state candidate come last week. And next week on Tuesday, we have another attorney general candidate coming to speak with us. And also Rachel Davis is running for a House seat. She'll be here next Tuesday as well. So it's just nice to get to know them a little bit before we vote for them. So if you're available next Tuesday, come on out and hear what they have to say. Today we're talking about caucusing, being a delegate, and how we can enter into this like grassroots part of our political system that a lot of us have not really been involved in. And we've actually been to caucus a few times. And the first time we went to caucus, we thought you just showed up and you would vote for who you think governor should be, and then you leave. So we showed up with our 4 kids, and they were all like 8 and under. And it turns out caucus takes a little longer than that. So we were there for, I don't know, 2 hours, and with all these kids. And well, it was such a good experience, though, actually, that they've been coming to caucus ever since. So now, after that one, we just knowingly made them come with us. So they've been to caucus. But even being at caucus, I have to say we haven't really understood it very well. And so we'd show up, we'd be part of the process. But then actually understanding it, it has taken some time. So this is such a nice opportunity for you to be at caucus and be very intentional about what you're doing there rather than just sitting back and let somebody else run the show in front of you and you just do what they say. Like, we want you guys to know what you're doing, why you're there, what the purpose is, and then we want you guys to be the ones running the show. So that's our hope for this. And so today we have Rick Weibell. He's from Midwest Swamp Watch. He's going to open up with us. He's done a lot of election integrity work, and he'll talk about some of the things that he's found and why this process is important in our election integrity piece. And also Senator Mark Koran is here, and he's going to kind of walk us through the whole caucus process. And we welcome Q&A like all the way through. So if he gets to a point where there's Q&A, then go ahead.
Hey, Deanna. So we're going to have Lauren candidate here from Chisago County. He's the chair. Unfortunately, he's ill. So Rick and I will double team it. But we also have with us a city council member from Taylor's Falls. And we'll have him share what it means to, he's heard our rhetoric.
Hold on, let me put you on mic.
So Troy Aniston is with me right here. So you've heard me preach before about getting involved. What does it matter? Just showing up. Troy's a great story about just showing up, what it did, participating, what it did. He became elected as a city council and be able to give you a little story about it really mattered. They had a city council person quit, and so we'll have him share the story and from somebody entering the caucus process, not knowing what it is. So between the 3 of us, we want to make sure that everybody gets their questions answered at the end of the day about why it matters. And Troy's a great example of how it's worked really well. So.
Okay. Well, as I've learned more and more about this, I learn more and more that it's a small group of people that make a big difference in who is running our government. So just because you're a small group of people, this is actually a very powerful group of people right here. So thank you very much for coming in, and thank you all for who are joining us online now and later, because you can really make a difference. And if we want to change the flavor of this government in our state, it starts with us and holding them accountable. So thank you all for taking part, and I'll hand this over to Rick.
Thank you so much. So I'm Rick Weibell, former Minnesota resident. I feel like I'm part of an AA group sometimes when I attend these events. Almost 4 years ago, my family and I moved out of the state of Minnesota as tax refugees. It's just easier to tell you exactly why. I still have my computer consulting business here in the Twin Cities, R&G Visions, and I support a lot of home users, small businesses that grow into medium-sized companies and stuff like that. But I've been in the computer industry for decades, working for IBM Global Services, Help Systems, none of that matters. But I also had an early political career. I was involved right away in the MNGOP, started in the caucus system, then also ran for a city council position, lost, and then tried it again 2 years later, won. And after serving for 4 years, I didn't think I was going to run again, but then after I saw the candidates who were going to run, I was like, no way. So then I ran for mayor and successfully was the mayor for 10 years for the city of St. Bonifacius, a small little town in southwestern Hennepin County. And if you remember some of the legendary stories of the guy who wanted to secede from Hennepin County, the first one to put a drone ban in the state of Minnesota, I'm that crazy guy. Yes, you can have a huge impact. Even at precinct caucuses, I even suggested ideas that became part of the party platform. I even suggested ideas that became templates for for the MNGOP as guiding principles and values, and it's still there today. I then also, through my precinct caucuses, became co-chair of the 3rd Congressional District for 8 years. So I worked with a congressman, Eric Paulson, and we helped change elections in the 3rd Congressional District to where we started winning more elections and helping change the dynamics of the state legislature. So a small person from a small little town, I woke up every day during those 8 years that I was co-chair of the 3rd thinking, how is it that me, this little guy from this little unknown town, could actually rise up and sit at the state executive committee meetings for 8 years and have a voice in the MNGOP? It is that easy. And unfortunately, too many conservatives, libertarians, and especially Christians believe the lie that there's separation between church and state. That has to end. And as I govern my city, I'll give you my verse, James 1:25. Those who do to protect the perfect law of liberty will be blessed. What that meant for me is that I need to make sure that I work hard to rally the troops around less government, less reliance on government, so that people can discover through the trials and tribulations of their lives who their creator is, what their gifts are, and how they can contribute back to society. Because it's that struggle that we go through is what makes our communities better, so that we can understand the human condition and that we can understand that there's hope and we are the change actors. And so when we have these lies told to us for 12 years in public education, that there's a separation between church and state, and so many people barely even go to Sunday school, when you have 5 against 1 days, it has an impact. And it also creates a fear. So today, thank you for showing up, because today we're going to rip off the veil of the fear and give you the confidence, the tools, and the ability to be able to be the change. Now remember, no single raindrop believes it's responsible for the flood. All those stupid motivational posters, I'm here to tell you, go to www.despair.com. I don't get paid by them, but they're the demotivators. They take a sarcastic look at how life ends up, and you'll get a great laugh. They even have a picture of the sinking Titanic. Maybe the purpose of your life is to serve as a warning to others. So you have to have fun with it. And so part of the thing that energizes me, especially at caucus night, is you realize when you attend that night, you're not alone. You're not alone in your thoughts. And there are other people in your community that do want to make a change. Not everybody understands how, but that's okay. Showing up is the first step. Knocking on your neighbor's door and just having a basic conversation of how things are running in the city, that's another step. Showing up at council meetings, expressing your views, that's another step. It's interesting how many videos that we're seeing on YouTube where we have all these people showing up for school board meetings, city council meetings, and they're going viral. What's interesting is they're going viral because we didn't understand that that's actually the normal thought of most Americans. And now we're appreciating it. So it's time for us to stand up and start taking actions. Part of what kind of got me back into Minnesota and involved in the 2020 election and the analysis of it is I was just completely blown away by what happened in Minnesota. I have a degree in political science from the University of Minnesota, so I really did well with that degree. Being mayor of a small town at $3,000 a year, I barely broke even. So, but beside that, I knew that there were some things that were a little afoot. So just kind of in short summary, there was a lot of things that we discovered that were just unbelievable. And we have this in our other part, and you can actually look at MidwestSwampWatch.com. We have a YouTube video out there, and we actually have some of the evidence out there, such as, yes, there were ballots in a bag in Dakota County. Yes, there was a post-election review that wasn't really completed in Dakota County. Yes, they didn't follow state statute when, in regards to absentee ballots. We discovered that 5 days after state certification, so we all voted November 3rd, this state certified the election on November 24th. And the data I have is November 29th. And you can actually go to our website and see if your ballot was connected. And for over 700,000 absentee ballots, they weren't connected. Especially it's discouraging when the state law says specifically that when an absentee ballot is received, it must immediately be entered into the statewide voter registration system. So 25 days is an immediate. How many of you are moms? How many of you have kids? When you tell your kids to go, you must immediately go clean your room. Is that 25 days later? Yeah, no. I didn't think so. Okay, so just checking. So that's an interesting argument. So there's two cases. There are one group of voters that vote in person before the election. Those are considered absentee ballots. And then there's the people that vote in person on the day of election. The funny part of state law is that they have until 42 days after the election, so December 15th, to actually get that work done. But don't worry about it. We're going to certify the election before we have that work so that you can't actually file a case by December 1st and have all the evidence to find all the duplicate voters. Don't worry about that. So those are some of the changes that we're going to talk about here too. So we all have high expectations of how the government is run, and some of you might have high expectations on how the precinct caucuses are going to be run. I'm going to tell you, relax. It's going to be kind of a hot mess. And these poor people who are going to be presenting and leading the precinct caucuses, they're going to be really nervous. And probably half of them, this could be their first time. So number one thing that you should do when you walk in, have a whole lot of grace and be willing to help. Because there's a whole lot of activities that are going to be happening. So if you have a precinct caucus that all of a sudden has like 50 people there and there's just the convener sitting there and they have their paperwork out there, you might want to, if you want to get like a delegate position and kind of get a little rewarded right away, be the first person to volunteer to help with the sign-up sheets, you know, to go sit behind the table, because guess what else that does? Everybody who's now coming in the door is going to see you, and they're going to misinterpret that you sitting there behind the table, that you're kind of in charge and that you know what's going on. So what is caucus? It's not a disease. It's not the flu. It's not COVID. Okay. It literally is a meeting at which local members of a political party or potentially not affiliated. They don't know that they're part of the party when they walk in the door. But as soon as you walk in the door and you sign your name on there, you're now part of the party. Congratulations, you're a member. Okay? And it's basically, they're basically saying their preference among the candidates for running for office. So a lot of the people who are going to show up there are probably supporting a candidate, more than likely a gubernatorial candidate, because those are the candidates that typically are out there door knocking already, trying to drive people to the caucus. Why? Oh, it was kind of mentioned. So in state statute at 8 o'clock, by 8 o'clock, they actually have to have a poll of who you guys think could actually be the next real gubernatorial candidate for your party. So this is a barometer for the gubernatorial candidates to see how well they're doing. So if you don't show up and vote for a candidate that you like right now, they might think nobody supports them and they're out. So this is an honest discussion that you need to have with your neighbors, talking about the gubernatorial candidates, the local candidates that you might like, but especially a gubernatorial candidate. This could be the finish line for half of the candidates that are running right now. Okay? So what will they do that night? Number one, they're going to choose volunteers who will organize political activities in the precinct. That's kind of not true. It's not only just in the precinct, but it's that BPOU. How many of you know what the term BPOU stands for? Raise your hand. Okay, good. So BPOU, and I hate to spell this out, Basic Political Organizational Unit. Yeah, that didn't help at all, right? That's what that stands for. The way to think of it is the lowest group area where a group of delegates select their Minnesota Legislative House member and or their Senate representative. Okay? So your state Senate representative. So it's that group that typically is organizing everything that happens within a region. So they will do the fundraisers for picnics, they'll do the meet and greets for candidates, they may even host debates of gubernatorial candidates, Secretary of State candidates, etc. And they also try to raise money to help get out the vote efforts. They also raise money to try and do voter registration, voter education, mailers. So part of what's going to happen that night is they're going to pass around an envelope to ask you to donate money, which will either go to that BPOU, the state party, or the congressional district. So it'll stay somewhere in that chain. The other thing that they're there to do is to discuss ideas for the party to support. So these are things that are called like platform ideas, legislative agenda items, and we'll kind of walk through that there's actually a piece of paper that you can download from the MNGOP's website that you should actually download ahead of time, where you can actually write out platform changes or legislative ideas, and then they can vote on it that night at the precinct caucuses, and then it'll go up to the next level.
Are these what they call the resolutions?
Yes, they are. Yep, absolutely. And then you also that night choose delegates who will endorse candidates at future conventions. So you will select representatives within your unit that night that will represent to go to the next House or Senate level to basically start the nomination process for who they want to endorse for the legislature for the state of Minnesota. Okay? And this is actually, those delegates are ultimately responsible for really testing that candidate to make sure that they understand the party platform, they understand the dynamics of the community. So this is why sometimes you will have communities that have different flavors of candidates because they represent their district well. You might have the term that you've heard of rhinos, ultra-conservative. Well, that's because that's kind of the makeup of those delegates that have nominated those types of candidates. Okay? And so that's part of the beauty of the Republican Party, is that it is really open. And so we have this spectrum of candidates and spectrum of needs based upon geographical area. So for example, farmers are going to nominate more agricultural related type of candidates out in greater Minnesota. Around the Duluth area, you might find candidates that might be more pro-mining and may not have thoughts about agriculture or industry. In the metro area, you may have more conservative values that are more proponents of homeschooling, more proponents of business expansion, and maybe some healthcare flavors in there. So that's how we get this spectrum across the Republican Party based upon geographical, regional needs. Okay, and that's a good thing. And so as you move up into the delegations, you may find that even especially in areas like this, where you have a good mix of rural and some consolidated downtown areas. And so they have different needs, where rurals might want to have more county road development, and the downtown development might want to have more housing concerns. Okay? Then, number 4, you'll vote for the governor in the straw poll. So when is caucus? That's right, February 1st at 7 p.m. Try to get there a little bit early, because they have a very tight schedule of one of the top things that they're going to do is say the pledge. I mean, on a cold winter night, it's going to be one of the best things that you can do and one of the rarest things that you can do. Should warm up your heart. This is where you can actually go. So please go ahead and take out your phones and take a picture of this if you need to find out where your caucus is. The Secretary of State offers this, and so does the MNGOP. If you go to the MNGOP's website or the DFL site, it'll take you right here anyways. Yep.
I might have missed something, but at caucus, they do a poll, so everybody in attendance has a chance to poll for what candidate we want to see endorsed for governor.
Correct.
Now, when do the same people there also vote for delegates?
Yes.
Okay, that takes place before the poll for the governor?
I'll actually give you the schedule here. So, and it's a great question. So he was asking, correct me if I'm wrong here, one of the agenda items is to vote for a governor preference, but also that night, do we also select who we vote for delegates? And yes, that is true, and I'll show you guys a little bit later, kind of the schedule of events. And it's also available on the MNGOP site. They actually have kind of the Precinct Caucus chair agenda, and some of that is actually set by state statute, kind of the order that it has to go through, and I have that here today for you guys. So here we go. Who should attend? So some of you have some talking to do with some other folks. Just like she said earlier, this is the gateway to the political process in Minnesota. It absolutely is. And I get a lot of people that say, precinct caucuses are too early. And I say, yeah, but there really is no better time in Minnesota to do it, because we all know what happens in March. High school hockey tournaments, March Madness, get the stuff off the lakes. Then you get into April. Yeah, we got to be planting stuff. We got to get stuff going. And then May, forget about it. It's graduations. It's move all the students out of the state and around the state, get them adjusted, summertime jobs. And you can pretty much forget about June through August. And so until we've had our fill of the state fair, we're not interested in politics. And then we'll go ahead and have the state primary. And then we'll go ahead and think about an election in November. So I then asked the public, is there a better time that you wish to have the precinct caucuses other than a cold winter night where you can't do much outside anyways? And seriously, is TV that great? All right. So, number 1, you can propose changes to the state party platform. Those are the party goals. Less taxes, no abortion, pro-Second Amendment, belief in the individual. The party platform is available at the MNGOP site, and you can review that. Number 2, you can propose resolutions to change local, county, state, and federal laws. Because then you can kind of get a sense, especially if you have a council councilmen or women sitting right there in the room, and all of you say, hey, we need to get Highland Road fixed, and you vote on that locally, now your council member knows that they have a group of people right there at the ready that might be willing to come before a council meeting to say that this is an important issue. So it starts right there. And you can exchange numbers with that council person to actually say, I'll help you. When can I come to the next council meeting? Most public folks that are going to attend a precinct caucus and sit with you, they're going to be pretty open and willing to talk to you. Why? Because they need your help desperately. All right. 3, you can learn about helping your local party interview, vet, and support candidates. It's so true. These candidates are looking for volunteers. And so many of these BPOUs that are out there don't have anybody. Do you realize that a third of Minnesota doesn't even have a functioning BPOU? So when you talk about a power shift, she's exactly right. It could literally just take 6 of you within a precinct caucus to overrun an entire BPOU and vote out all of the officers and change its trajectory if you need to. Okay? Number 4, you can sign up to be a precinct election judge for election day. This is one of the gateway pieces because the deadline to sign up is May 1st. So they'll have sheets right there. Remember where you volunteered to get up there at that desk? You get to see all of the volunteer sign-up sheets there, and that's one of them. One of the things that the party's missing this year, which is really disappointing, is there's another position that's really important. And you have to go to their website to sign up for this because they won't have the paperwork there, and that is the ballot board judges, which monitors and handles the absentee ballots. That's a big one. And for those of you who are of retirement age, we really need you to be there because they want you to be there for 46 days. And it's a great way right before Christmas to stock up on that cash for the grandkiddos for Christmas. Yep.
Is there any legislation in place right now for election day precinct judges? Like, do employers have to give employees time off?
Yes, they do.
Precinct, okay.
Yep.
So if I sign up to be an election judge that day, I can go to my boss and say,
Here, I'm gonna help out the video. I'm gonna give you the mic, ask the question again.
ask what question? Ask my question?
Yep.
Okay. So the question I asked was if there's any legislation currently in place mandating that employers give their employees time off to be election judges.
Correct me if I'm wrong here, Senator Koran, but I believe that is true. And the employer, you have to give them, I think, at least 10 days written notice that you're going to do this. And then the employer has to make adjustments for you to do this. Also, as an asterisk, they also have to give you time off to be able to vote in an election too. Okay? So, great question. And that's really important. So, and you get paid to be an election judge. So it's kind of a cool gig. Some employers actually designate it as if you have kind of donation time, they sometimes will count that as well.
Can you be both an election judge and a ballot board judge?
So the question is, can you be both a ballot board judge and an election judge? I'm going to say because the timelines sometimes cross, in most counties, the answer is going to be no. So, because sometimes they're still accepting absentee ballots on the day of the election at the county seat, that they're still processing them on the day of the election. So,
You explained what the ballot board judge was, but could you define if there's a qualification to be, what is it called? The precinct election judge and what that requires or what that job or position would entail?
so what that job requires is that you be of voting age and a registered voter in the state of Minnesota, and you just have to have the willingness to go through the training, and they will train you on everything that you need to do to be able to do the job correctly, and that's paid as well. And then you just have to be able to be there for the entire time, which is usually from 7 a.m. until 9 p.m. typically is what they ask of. Some cities will shorten that to where they allow half days, but don't count on that. And so you just have to have the willingness. So.
You have to also read and write English.
Yes, that is true. So he said that you also have to read and write English. So everybody okay with that? Raise your hand. Okay, so you meet those requirements? All right. And so number 5 is sign up to be a ballot board judge to help with the 45 days of absentee balloting. Unfortunately, that won't be there. I looked through the party documents last night on the website, and they failed to have that sign-up sheet available for Precinct Caucus night. I have a text out to Donna Bergstrom to see if she can correct that. 6, you can learn about local issues in your school, city, and county, then help educate other voters as well. That's hugely important because so many times you may not realize that you have a school board member right there in your precinct caucus and even at the next level. And so there has been more of a desire of the population to actually start getting engaged in school board elections. And so these BPOUs, they have to start doing it. And if you can volunteer for officer positions there at the BPOUs, you can actually make that happen. 7, you can become a delegate to support and decide who gets the party nomination for the Minnesota legislature, U.S. Congress, and the governor's office. And that also includes the Secretary of State. That also includes the Attorney General's office as well. So as you move up within the party, if you become a delegate, you actually get to see more and have a larger influence because all of these politicians are looking for your vote, support, and volunteer time. 8, you can help the party by becoming involved in issues you care about. There are a lot of people that come into the party for specific issues. There's groups that are out there that are definitely pro-Second Amendment that are heavily involved in the party. Traditionally, there's a lot of pro-life groups within the party as well. And there's even pro-business groups that are involved in the party as well. But this is an opportunity for Christians to get back. And so if you remember during the 80s, where Reagan kind of brought in the Christian conservatives to come in to the party, that helped get him the boost to win the presidential election. And so we're looking for that again over time. 9, you can vote for a governor candidate you like in the straw poll. If you don't get out and support a candidate, they may quit their candidacy. It's important that they know what you think. And of course, number 10, you can say the pledge with other like-minded individuals. Hey, on a cold winter night, what a better way to warm the heart. All right, so here is the actual agenda, kind of in a shortened area, what to expect. And so I kind of condensed it down. They have an actual 16-point agenda. I've kind of merged some of them together. So number 1, 7 p.m., start. They call to order, and then they do the pledge. So I'm telling you, please get there early. 6:45 is your deadline to arrive, okay? So get there a little early. Try to help out because these folks are really nervous about it. Number 2, they will introduce the temporary officers. So that means the person who's in charge of setting up the meeting. So they are kind of called the secretary to start it off. And if there's really long lines, they're going to pause and they're going to start reading some of the candidate letters. They may even read letters from the state party talking about voter integrity, talking about the future of the party, the welcoming letter, etc. Unfortunately, a lot of people don't really pay attention to those, and they also find it extremely boring. Unfortunately, you have to expect this because there's still people checking in. So this is why I say you have to walk in the door with grace. 3, they will literally be reading the legal requirements of today's caucus. They will be reading statutorily, they have to do it. They have to read the state laws of what they're required to do. So again, this is a grace area. 4, they will introduce the people who are observers. Those are the kids who are under 17, who aren't eligible to vote. Or they may actually be members of your community that have decided, you know, I just want to see what kind of crazy goes on here, and I'm not affiliating myself with you guys. So it could be a 40-year-old newspaper reporter, and they might be there as an observer. And then you may have elected officials. And so hopefully the person there is aware of the elected officials and may be able to point them out. That's not always the case, especially in smaller communities. You'd be surprised how many people don't know who's on their city council, who's on their school board. And so hopefully they'll introduce themselves. Then we start getting a little excited. Number 5, we will elect the chair, the officers, and the tellers of the caucus. This is literally the fun part of not it. Because after they've read the statutes and it says, you're responsible for the next 2 years of being the caucus chair, people think that is an overwhelming responsibility. Like, you're responsible for running this show for the next 2 years, and they misunderstand, oh my gosh, I have to like call meetings and I'm responsible for all of these random cats in my area? No, thank you. Actually, just step up to the plate and do it, because guess what? You don't have to do anything until 2 years later anyways, and you get to be the person to actually call the caucus and set up the room and arrangement for where that night's gonna be. That's really the truth of it. People get turned off and think, oh my gosh, this is a huge behemoth organization. Oh, and whoever's voted secretary, they're literally responsible for making sure that the pre-filled out forms of who the delegates are, the minutes, it's already all pre-filled out, that you are literally just responsible for delivering that package back to the BPOU or a congressional district, okay? And after that, you have no responsibility literally for the next 2 years. And then the tellers, you guys are the volunteers to help count the secret ballots of the presidential poll, and potentially if somebody asks for a secret ballot regarding a resolution, that's what the tellers do. They kind of help count those votes. So then, hopefully at about 7:30, 8 o'clock, because I'm sure all of 1 through 5 went perfectly clean and nobody had any questions. But no matter what, number 6 is going to move up or move back. But no matter what, at about 7:30, somebody is going to have to remember, oh, we have to make sure we get our election results in by 8 o'clock. So we need to start the straw poll. So then people will then vote for their favorite gubernatorial candidate. Then by 8 o'clock, they have to call it in to the BPOU or the congressional district. And then those numbers then get fed to the state party and the Secretary of State's office, where you can actually see the results statewide. And so then at about 8:30, you will literally hear a soft moan depression of potential candidates saying, it's done. Yep, go ahead, sir.
When you vote for the poll for the gubernatorial candidate,
Yep.
you just write it on a piece of paper. Are there any requirements of correct spelling or initials are allowed or anything like that?
Good question. Typically, the state party will actually have a sheet that the precinct convener would have already printed out with the candidates' names in there. And so it will be, as of, I believe it's this Friday, any candidate that has filed seeking the Republican endorsement, they'll already have the sheets of paper already printed and pre-formatted. And then you just basically fill out the checkbox or the oval. And so for folks that are visually impaired, you can have your designee help you fill out that ballot. It's not as stringent as the state laws, so it's more neighborly. You can definitely get the help there. I just ask that please, 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 before you go to these gubernatorial candidates' websites, learn what they're about. And even at this slow time, you might actually find on their websites events that they're going to that you may actually be able to attend. And there's some pre-posted videos. I believe there's been at least 4 debates between the gubernatorial candidates that you can go back and review those and kind of see how folks have answered certain questions. But most of their websites are pretty clear as to where they stand on issues. So that's good. Number 7. So after the straw poll, then this is where your exciting part comes into play. This is where you get to select the delegates and alternates for Senate and congressional districts. Okay, so this is where you get to select like-minded people to go up. So if you want to become a delegate, I would ask you if you bring at least 6 people with you and you just ask them, hey, I want to be a delegate. I don't need you to be a delegate, but I'll represent our ideas. I just need you to show up and vote for governor, and I need you to show up and vote for me. And then after that, you can leave. And that's a little bit of a lie, because actually most people leave right after the straw poll. And I'm telling you, don't leave. So bring your 6 friends, have them come in, sit through this, have them vote for you, and then they can leave. Now, the longest part of the night is not this next section. 8 is when they start passing out the donation envelope and the volunteer sign-up list. Number 9, they will actually start talking about the election judges and poll challengers, and they'll have those sign-up sheets, and they'll describe what those positions are. So the way to think of this is that election judges actually have the legal authority to challenge voters. Poll challengers literally have no legal authority other than just to stand there and watch and observe and potentially send a text to the lawyers team at the state party, or potentially just kind of go talk to an election judge and say, hey, I've observed this. Does this look right to you? That's about all that they can do. And they're not paid. Yes, sir.
The ballot counting board, is that the correct term? Are those individuals selected by the party?
So no, it's a good question. So let me go back here. So you're talking about the election judges, correct?
Well, the ballot counting, the ballot board.
Okay. So the ballot board, I'm gonna put an asterisk right here, because there's actually a Supreme Court challenge right now in the state of Minnesota that we're waiting to find out what the decision is going to be. But during the 2020 election, what is supposed to happen is that all the parties, there's 4 of them, are supposed to submit lists to the Secretary of State, Steve Simon. Those counties were then supposed to then first primarily go through those lists for their counties and determine from both parties who they would call them, ask them if they'd want to be part of it. And if they didn't find anybody, then they started hiring their own employees to basically do this function. And some counties actually didn't even look at the list, and they just hired their own people. I'm going to do a secondary asterisk here. So the Supreme Court is supposed to decide whether these counties were in the wrong or in the right for what they did. However, there's a little bit of crow that we have to eat here in the state of Minnesota. 2 counts here. Number 1, yes, there were over 7,500 people who had signed up on the election judge list for the state party, but when the party went through and submitted it to Steve Simon, only 3,500 addresses came out clean and actually matched up, and there wasn't due diligence to clean up that list, and so we kind of stepped on our own foot and tripped over ourselves. But regardless, the Secretary of State's website says they're looking for over 30,000 volunteers. So if you cut that number in half, that means the MNGOP needs 15,000 people. So we didn't even start out on the right foot. Okay? Let me come around.
That's okay.
Because I want to make sure that
How many delegates does a or a precinct receive?
Oh, this is such a nasty question. They will tell you there at night, and the reason why I say it's a nasty question is because it's based upon a really complicated mathematical formula based upon how many votes in the last presidential election were cast out of each of those precincts. That determines how many delegates rise from the precinct to go into the next level of the Senate districts. So for example, if nobody voted in your precinct for Donald Trump, you would actually get 0. But if half of your folks, it's based upon a crazy formula where typically each district is going to get between 8 and 16 delegates is the way it kind of goes. Okay, on average. Yep. Yeah, in some cases in Minneapolis, it's as low as 2. So, okay. All right, then the next thing after the election judges, this is where a lot of people, the rest of the folks who aren't as interested, will literally walk out, because this is where number 10 comes in, the platform and action agenda resolutions. And so you will have quite a few people that are not interested in the agenda, the party platform, or about talking about bills, because they know it's going to be debated, et cetera. But there are some people there who are really excited about debating an issue. And this is where you can actually test those theories at a local level. And so you could actually have a plethora of ideas to have out there. A quick thing that is actually available on the MNGOP's website is this little thing, the Robert's Rules of Order. Okay. More than likely, you're not going to have a strict parliamentarian or a chair that is going to follow every single one of these things to the letter of the law. Okay? And it's your neighbors. Okay, let's get real. You should run the meeting like if it's at your dining room table and having a proper discussion. But to kind of move things along, if you see a little bit of drifting and you kind of want to just, especially in the resolutions area, this is where it becomes important. So a resolution, when you have that piece of paper, you say, I move that we consider strengthening the Second Amendment in the state of Minnesota to remove permit to carry, that everybody should just be able to open carry without any type of a permit. And you have that resolution, you say, I move that we do X, Y, and Z. If you get a second, that means you now can have discussion on that motion, and then you can vote on it. If there's no second to your motion, it's dead, and you get to move on. So when you hear something that you like and you want it to be passed, it's important that you be engaged and say the word second. Okay. And then if you like the idea, but you think a little different nuance needs to be made, you can amend the motion. Okay.
Just for clarification, is this the delegates are doing this once they're voted in, or is this everybody in the room?
So for clarification, this is everybody in the room. So, and the same process also happens when you get up into the BPOU levels. It gets a little bit more stricter because you have a lot more people that are there. And so when you have a room full of 100, 300 people, that's when Robert's Rules of Order really has to take into effect. But when you're there at your precinct caucuses, where you might have anywhere between 8 and say 80 people, it's a little bit more manageable. And most people are there just a little bit softer that aren't going to be as engaged. But this is a way to basically kind of help kind of manage that.
Okay. So is there a few more slides that
Yep.
you want to finish up with? Okay. And then like maybe 10 more minutes?
Yep, less than
Okay.
that, yep.
Okay, thanks.
So here's where you can go to actually get the resolutions form. It is right here on the MNGOP's website. And so you can take a picture of this. You'll actually see the state party platform there. And you'll see this form here that you should pre-download and write any resolutions that you want to have. So I'll wait for everybody to take a picture, because this is a good one for you. Yep.
When is the actual endorsement of our governor official?
So the question is, when is our endorsement of the actual governor official? So the actual endorsement works up through the delegate process, where once you select your delegates from that precinct level, then they go to that BPOU. That BPOU then selects delegates for the state convention, which is typically held in May. So usually mid-May to late May. And then at that convention, all of those delegates select the nominees, or they get together and select the nominees for governor, lieutenant governor, secretary of state, and state auditor. And attorney general, yep. And then here are some quick election integrity resolutions. You can take a picture of this as well. So number 1, require state or federal issued ID for voting. 2, end vouching. 3, minimize absentee to just 14 days instead of 46. Get rid of the drop boxes. 5, remove mail-in ballots, in-person only except military. 6, removal of poll books, paper registrations only. 7, only relatives or court-appointed guardians can help a person vote. Staff members of facilities not allowed to help to vote. 8, restore party ballots at the ballot boards. This is the asterisk because we're waiting on the Minnesota Supreme Court ruling. Number 9, no county canvass nor state canvass until all voter histories are entered in. 10, free state issued ID for voting. This is the difference between the MNGOP and the MNDFL. On the DFL website, they have a position called County Liaison, We don't have that on the MNGOP side. And so Midwest Swamp Watch is working with local activists to create those local liaisons where we're actually doing conversations with county officials to talk about the dead voters, the bad addresses, the duplicate voters, all of that kind of stuff. And we're looking into the future where we're looking at all of the new registrations that are coming in. And anytime we see a UPS store, a mailbox registration, we're letting them know that that's an invalid voter. And the other part of the county liaison that the DFL has is that they create this relationship so that way, anytime that there's not somebody available on the list, they'll go find somebody and get them on that list. So that's something new that we're going to start creating as well. Election judges, if you want to be an election judge, I hate to say this, but you have to register everywhere. You have to register with the party. You have to register with your city. On this slide here is the list of cities that require you to register with them in order to become an election judge. On this slide is also the county-specific election judge applications if you want to be an election judge within their county. So you have to go to those websites and actually go there. You can actually find this at the Secretary of State's website, that link there at the bottom.
So Rick, if your city or county isn't listed there, then if you register with GOP or whatever, then you're fine.
Correct. Yeah. So the question is, if your county and city is not listed on here, you just register through the MNGOP, you'll be fine? Yes, that's correct. Because in the party submits the list to the Secretary of State and then parses that out to each of the counties so that they can select.
And are you supposed to get a response from them, like, hey, thanks, we'll get you registered or whatever?
So the question is, will you get a response from them? No, not right away, and that's unfortunate. We're going to try and change that, and so we actually have some individuals here that are actually working with the MNGOP that's got the old list, but will probably help support them on the new list, that as we get the list on the MNGOP side, we'll give them the acknowledgement, at least from the MNGOP side. County auditors are typically a lot better, where they will actually let you know, typically within 30 days, that they've accepted your application. So, this is what we're finding out. All right, so that is the end of our presentation. If you want to donate, send tips, MidwestSwampWatch.com and tips at MidwestSwampWatch.com. You can see our YouTube videos there, and you'll see our evidence out there for a lot of what we've discovered, and stay tuned.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Rick.
Yep.
All right. Before we have Senator Koran come up, I'm going to just take a 10-minute break. Do you have a question?
I have one question.
Rick, we have one more question.
My question was, you said the donations might be divided in one of three areas. I was just curious who decides and why, and where do those monies go?
So I'll tell you, when I was co-chair of the 3rd Congressional District, what we typically did is we took all of those envelopes at the BPOU level, and we would just say, keep the money there, and the 3rd Congressional District wouldn't take it. And then in other years, when the state party was so in debt, we actually used all that money to help pay down the debt. And so we basically took all of that caucus money and sent it all directly to the state party to try and rehabilitate them. This year, I don't know what they've decided as a group of officers, but more than likely, I think it's going to go back to the traditional way, which is they're going to try and keep the money at the BPOU level. So.
Well, thanks. Rick did a great job. I work with Rick all the time, especially on all the election integrity stuff. He's like a walking encyclopedia, and he does a great job. Their entire group, and I think if you want to play a role in elections, I think it's about everything we talked about today. Every single thing we've talked about getting involved in caucus, is your opportunity to play a role in the integrity, right? Everybody believes that there's a whole host of challenges in our election system. But almost every one of those challenges has been allowed because the opposition counted on us doing one thing, and that was not showing up. And we met their expectations for the last 30 years. The other thing that they've done is they've done a great job at focusing on every single political office in the country. When we talk about the MNGOP or the Republican Party, we've been pushed aside or moved aside because we shouldn't focus on cities, counties, townships, school boards, county prosecutors, sheriffs, judges, because they're really nonpartisan offices. Really. Has anybody ever met a nonpartisan person? And so now what we're seeing is, because you are showing up in school boards, is that now you're a terrorist, you're an anti-American. Only because the Democrats don't like any opposition to what they've done for the last 30, 40 years. And it stops. It really stops with you showing up. Rick did a good job at about the nuts and bolts of what to expect in a caucus. It literally is the grassroots opportunity, or the ground floor, for you to enter in the opportunity to build a base operation for all things political. What comes out of that is, by participating in a BPOU, you get to be with your neighbors, right? Everything that we've talked about today caucus is run by the BPOU, by the way. They have to raise the money. There's no magic group that shows up and just makes stuff happen. It's all volunteers. And so they have to raise the money, they have to rent facilities, they have to coordinate every facet of it. Most have no idea what that means. But it really is the grassroots. If you don't show up at that opportunity, you really miss great opportunity. And I think Rick talked a couple times. I work with our county chairs, and Chisago County, unfortunately, they were not able to make it today because they're ill. But I look at it as, it really is an opportunity. It's an opportunity to enter, to play a role that best fits your desires. I don't care if you want to give an hour or $1, do it. If you want to play a small role, pick whatever you like, what interests you, do it. Show up, and our job as a political organization is to make sure that we utilize your time and put you on a path so you know your time is valuable, no matter what it is. The BPOU takes a whole bunch of people to work and do everything. They've got committees. When you join and become a part of this process, you can be part of a committee, recruitment committee, technology committee, messaging committee, letter to the editor committee, whatever it is. Those are all opportunities. And the more people we have show up, the better we are as an entire unit to make sure that every office in every major body in the communities we live, certainly in this area, should reflect conservative values. It really is, and by the way, it can be a lot of fun. Now, I will argue with Rick a little bit on the rules, or not the rules, but the party platform. Sometimes it can occupy a little too much of our time. And so I'm going to work really hard to influence that process, that not only is it our party platform and our values fit on a postcard, right? And we can talk about that all we want. Does it change a lot? No, I would rather change the dialogue about real legislative topics and agendas and what we're doing today, both at the local level, across the board, and then something measurable that you've enforced or thrust upon the Senate body and the House body as Republicans, that we give you an update every 2 years. What are all those things that we had in the legislative agenda that you believe that you get to, that I would rather see you have an influence in that conversation about, is it still a priority of ours, right? Where do you want that to be? Top of the priority, middle of the priority? Give us what we've done. I call it kind of our baking list. We've got our baking list. What did we accomplish and finish? What's still in the oven, yet to be baked? And then what are the topics, or what are the new things we want to add to that list? Every 2 years is what this is designed for, because it's around the political agenda, the legislative session, the election cycle. It would be then, to me, move to a more meaningful conversation, because it's really not a bunch of 8-headed people that show up to a caucus, right? Sacrificing people. It's just you and your neighbors. And so I want to find topics that make it so you have a free and open conversation. There's business piece, right? There's a business piece to it that's legitimate to form our organization and to create opportunity if you want to ascend through the delegate ranks and play a more important role. That's just one piece of it. It's actually one of the more minor pieces. By ascending to each one of those, you get so many other opportunities by just showing up. I'm blessed to have an election team or a committee since August of 2015, one of the very few who has a full-time campaign team. And in an off year, by just showing up, not only do you get to see the candidates, right? You get to have influence. I mean, in a positive way. You get to talk to the real people. Everybody thinks that we're crazy people that, just want to be a politician. Couldn't be further from the truth. Everybody that you'll meet down there that serves as amazing sacrifices, everyone in our families makes amazing sacrifices to allow us to do this. But none of us plan to, or very few of us plan to be here. In off-year elections, I was blessed. The greatest opportunity I could provide my team is almost every single one of them played a significant role in a campaign of a U.S. Senate candidate, U.S. congressional candidate, or governor candidate. They're all there for you, for the taking, right? And if you don't show up, they don't have resources, right? But you also get access to the people that are going to be the future leaders. If, by the way, you're not one of them yourself. So don't forget that. Every one of you are qualified. You know, we do have higher criteria than the Democrats. We do require a pulse, not only to serve and to vote. So, but it really is. And so when you go to the caucus, you know, we've got, I live in Chisago County. Chisago County is a great functioning BPOU. There's script here, when you show up, 13 pages long, take you through all the business side, really what the organization is. It's a legitimate part of what we do. There's a business side of this. But then there's the other side about, it's up to you to be defined. What role and how do you want to change, and what goals do you have for that BPOU or that base operation for all things political? We should be recruiting candidates. You know, one of my goals is that each one of those BPOUs gets that list of the influencers in their district. Give you an example how important it is. In this Senate district, or I'm in Senate District 32, so I have all Chisago, all of Isani, except for the 4 townships in the southwest corner. There are 168 elected officials. 168, just in that Senate district. Not all of Isani County or all of Chisago, just that Senate district. When you add up the total influencers that are derived from that election, it's almost 550 people that you're voting for. And that doesn't include the people they hire. So when you think about the planning, economic development boards, the parks and recs, and you name whatever other working subcommittee they have in a city, county, or township, or school board even, they only appoint like-minded people. So you got to make sure that those that are elected are like our minds. And then on the other side, we don't even think about this because I think we've just missed the boat for so long. We should go out. We've done it in our area, and I think Dieta, we've given the list, and so we look and we can vet those people. By participating in the BPO, you get access to the Republican National Database. It's called Data Center. We have 3,200 data elements on every single one of you. All right, and that's what we use to determine whether you're a hard Republican, soft Republican, and we use that data to strategize a political campaign. Rarely do we ever go out and knock every door. You know, we just don't do that. It's much more sophisticated than that. But having access to that information allows you then to be able to use that apparatus and bring that to the local offices. How can you enable a city council or township or school board member? Can we bring better print mail facilities? Even if we bring print mail facilities, we can provide you with the data to make sure that it gets mailed to the people you need. You don't need all the votes. And we can tell you which ones to do, so your monies will go far greater, and we can just bring that entire campaign apparatus and then make sure that we win at a much greater level. That hasn't been even in the thought process. When I came on, I've always been that way. But when you get elected, you get a little more influence. I'm so happy today. I don't think you'll hear a congressional candidate. I don't think you hear anybody not talking about local elections, and every elected office is where it matters. And you're all the ones that are going to make it happen. And so coming into this, become a delegate, show up, participate in the conversation. Hopefully the information that you got today, Rick did a good job. Dieta, did you provide that script, or did you make it available, the Chisago County one, to everybody on your website? I think if you would, and you can mail it, so you can just, it's longer, but it really gives you a detailed process of what the script is about, really what you need as the entity and the legal organization that we are. But the reason I say it's worth a read is some BPOUs are really good. Again, they'll give you a whole script, walk right through it, and make it easy for somebody. Some might give you one page, and you're supposed to figure it out on your own. And so with that, Rick is completely right. You read that and you become a little bit more informed than the average person who shows up. Be that convener. Some of them might not even have a convener identified. and then make sure that you can run the organization. And don't feel bad. You make a mistake. There's key things that are documented almost everywhere, even those that have limited information about what you need to do. And ultimately, at the end of the day, you do your straw poll. But the most important thing is you're going to have that county delegate. And I don't think I didn't hear Rick, but for every county delegate that you elect, that body there in itself, your neighbors, will elect that delegate. But you also have the equal number of alternate spots. So if there's 4 delegates, there's 4 alternates. If the delegate doesn't show up to one of those conventions in the future, you show up to those conventions. It's educational to be able to participate. But if somebody doesn't show up, there's a procedure that will seat you in that convention, so you get to vote, even as an alternate. I would argue, I take a position, I'm one of the very, very few people that I don't run for any of those positions. I want everybody on my team. I would love to see no open delegate or alternate seats available. Us elected officials, we already have a voice, right? We don't need any more. And if my endorsing convention comes down to my vote, I've done a poor job. But show up and be a delegate. Now, it gets a little bit more complicated. There's in some areas, if you guys dig deeper down into it, depends where you're at, you might hear them toss around a 30 to 1, 45 to 1, or 60 to 1, or 90 to 1. Based on the number of people that are elected or that vote Republican in a precinct, the BPOU will decide the ratio to create the number of delegate seats. Could be 1 delegate for every 90 votes, 60, 45, or 30. Sandy County in Chisago happens to be 90. And we do that to normalize. We do that because of for some contentious reasons that we want to be on equal playing ground. Many have 45 or 60 to make sure that everybody who wants to be a delegate or an alternate has an opportunity to be there. And again, showing up to the conventions. So when you're elected a county delegate, you're going to get to endorse House and state candidates. But next year, you get to elect the leadership and the BPOU. So the executive committee is what are those elected positions in a BPOU. They're open to anybody who wants to run for them that shows up, but you're elected by the delegates that are selected in caucus. That's why it really matters. Show up. If you want to create a functional BPOU wherever you are, and you're willing to commit to make a home for everybody, no matter what their desires are, we need you. But that's what matters. Question?
When you say 1 to 90, and I stand here, the 90 represents votes for whom?
Yes, so the question is, if we talk about the ratio 1 to 90, it is the 1 to 90 is the number of Republican votes in that precinct determines, and based on 90 to 1, so if you got 90 people who voted in that precinct, you're going to get 1 delegate and 1 alternate slot. And again, double that and so on. So that's how it works. And if you pick 45, you create more opportunities.
But 90 would represent a vote for what candidate?
But that's just, so that 90 to 1 is just to determine the number of delegates in every precinct. So it will be determined by that county, and it will apply to all precincts and how they allocate delegates at a precinct level based on how many people vote Republican. Yep. And remember, we are a private party, so we decide that. And then again, you can do that now. It gets, and the reason I tell you we do 90 is because it normalizes. Because if you do 45, one does 90 and one does 45, the BPOU that does 45, their delegate vote in an endorsement convention is only worth half of that county that picks 90. That's why I bring it up. So I brought it up. We picked 90. We've always picked 45 or 30, whatever it is. So everybody has an opportunity to participate. But so there's an apportionment that does occur for those things. But I just wanted to bring it up because as you get more involved in it, you will see those numbers become really important in seeking and making sure you're on a level playing ground when it's a contentious or contested endorsing convention. So in my perspective, it goes against my belief that I want a home for everybody. But in this contentious world, in the district I serve in, it's a must for Chisago to do that. So then Rick talked. You had the you have the opportunity to then become a state. If you could you put that last slide back up, Rick? Rick's slide. You then can choose to ascend and run. And remember, these are all your neighbors, and you're going to get up. And every one of them, you get up and you get to do a little 30-second bit, who I am, why it's important for me, where are you from, normally 30 seconds, 1 minute normally. To become a congressional district and a congressional/state delegate. You get to go to the state convention. Each one of these, when you become a delegate, there's a county convention, a congressional district convention, and then even a higher level delegate who gets to elect the leadership of the MNGOP party. So each of them are opportunities to ascend. And you get together with like-minded people, and it gives greater exposure, greater insight, and greater access to everybody who's seeking office and who occupies offices. And to me, it's for you to take. And if you don't show up, I can guarantee you that seat is going to be filled by somebody who may not share your views. And the less of us that show up, the Democrats will certainly, as they have, taken those seats and those views. I'm not going to cover everything. I just wanted to cover from my perspective. We've talked about Rick talked about the donations. Remember, everything we do except for the state party is in a volunteer position. Everything we do. Congressional district, BPOUs, right? The BPOU executive team, which is elected by those delegates, it's all volunteer. We have to raise money for every single thing. And I've seen people, you go out and have fundraisers at a BPOU. It's exciting and empowering to go out and raise $10,000, $15,000 and to be able to then give that to the candidates that you choose. $1,000 can matter in a highly contested race. And you get to make that choice, become educated who they are, and it really is rewarding. But you also have a whole host of things that you have to fund for your organization to exist just in your county for the base operations, you know? So, trying to think, did I cover how the BPOUs could be more effective, those local candidates, in all political offices locally, the ability to vet all of those candidates. I know we talked about the list a little bit, but we should be using our apparatus at the BPOU to vet everybody or do voter ID on everybody who occupies a seat. And if we can educate and provide that to everybody, then you can go up and show up. Just because they are modeled as a strong Republican, you need to show up to make sure they're operating, making decisions. Not just that they vote well, but are they participating, are they leading, or are they a follower? It matters. Then with that list, you will then have the offshoot will be those that you need to replace, and you need to recruit candidates or become a candidate to be able to replace it. And then it goes back to those appointed seats of all the park and rec, planning, zoning. We got to build a relationship with everybody who is in office, who shares our values, and make sure they know we can be a massive resource for them. And when they get a list of 4 people that are going to be appointed to planning and zoning, we should get those names and we should run it through the voter ID. I'm telling you, there isn't a single BPOU in this state. We're working on them, but that even thinks like that. The Democrats have been doing this for 30 years. Every single apparatus, every single tool they can bring, they will do that. And so that's how we've got to get out and educate. And you got to think, how else can I help that local candidate? You know, every one of them's going to need a team, volunteer on their teams. There's nothing that I've never met a candidate that has too many dollars and too many people, ever. So do that. It's really important. Election judge, poll challengers. Rick talked about the lawsuits. Minnesota Voter Alliance has done a great job, and those things are going well. I'll give you a little tidbit. I serve on the state elections committee, and Hennepin Ramsey County alone has election boards or ballot boards. And so they came to us, and I think the plaintiffs in the Ramsey County lawsuit that Minnesota Voter Alliance, there's 3 of them, they actually really became the go-to person for the people who run the elections in Ramsey County to help them fill those seats. So it was really good. Now, is it perfect in Ramsey County? No, but it's light years ahead of where it was. And all we want to do is make sure that it's just a legitimate election. Hennepin County, on the other hand, just to give you the difference in size, I think most people look in St. Paul or Ramsey County as being this small, tiny little county and Hennepin being monstrous. 93 election judges in, ballot board members in Ramsey County, 102 in Hennepin County. Hennepin County's testimony to us in committee was, "But it's just too hard for us to follow state law." Well, we're sorry. We didn't know it was such a burden to follow state law as a government entity and focusing on elections. And so they said, it's just easier for us to hire. And then you really talk about, it's a partisan nature, right? There's a partisanship, which ultimately becomes a bipartisan oversight. And so we talked to him, well, how do you, if you hire them, how do you teach them to become nonpartisan, if that was ever legit? And he said, well, we just teach them. Really? So I asked, how does one teach somebody? I asked the question, well, how does one teach somebody to be nonpartisan? And he said, well, we just teach them. And they said it without vomiting briefly and or a straight face. But that's who these people are. Because think about what unites every one of those cities and counties. They're all a member of what? A public union. And the number one contributor to all Democrat elected races, outside, teachers are number one. All public unions, probably the top 10 funders every single election race. And so, don't get me wrong, I was a state employee. There's a lot of great state employees. And a lot of them don't believe any of this garbage, but there's getting to be fewer and fewer of them because they're flushing them out right now. They're flushing out everybody with any opposing view in those arenas. So that's how important it is, who we elect, who they appoint, and who they hire. We can really influence, and we have to put the focus on who we elect and who they appoint to start flushing out. It takes a lot of work to root out ineffective and non-productive employees in a unionized public environment. They become permanent. And their performance, which is all driven politically, is the thing that impacts our lives the most. It really is. They have a political agenda that functions, and they now discard or disrespect the legislative body and certainly the executive body. So we have to start picking away at every single one of them, so not empower them. And I'll leave you on the last one about how important it is with the local offices. Think about the governor's overzealous executive orders over the last couple of years. All of the enforcement for those executive orders was almost exclusively cities and counties in our conservative districts. Not just the blue crazy people, but in our conservative districts. It does matter who in our district, in our area. And I think that's why they focused for 30 years. They built a safety and security network that allows them to act so overzealously and so egregiously with these policies at the federal level and state level because we let it happen in our backyard. So, and that stops today. That's the good part, and it's the fastest thing we can do. So I wanted to bring up one person who got involved. Troy's become just a fabulous spokesperson of just showing up. You guys have heard me talk before. Just showing up matters, right? When you think about cities, counties, townships, school boards, showing up matters. It brings a level of accountability that it's very difficult for them to operate and function and discard your behavior or discard your desires or your will when you don't show up. They get in a little, hell, where most of them, you get 5-0 votes almost exclusively, no opposition, no opposing views. It's hard to believe that everything would function in that manner. So Troy not only showed up, got involved, but I'd love for him to give you a little bit of story about what it meant to him and what they've done in just the little city of Taylor's Falls. So Troy, come on up.
All right.
Troy Anderson.
Thank you, Mark. Yes, my name is Troy Anderson. I am the newest elected city council member of Taylor's Falls, Minnesota. I ran in 2020 and won. Prior to that, my wife and I moved into Taylor's Falls, I would say about 2016. We love the town. I started attending city council meetings. I was the only one attending city council meetings. Sometimes we had a press person there, but otherwise that was it. I sat back there all alone. I didn't really say much. You know, that's not my deal. I like to just get stuff done. I like to stay behind the scenes. That's the type of person I am. But I would sit there, and the city council meetings lasted about 30 minutes, rarely over that. There was no opposition, none. So I decided to run in 2020. Prior to that, I do need to say there were two council members, existing council members in 2019 that came up to me and said, "Are you going to run for city council?" They actually wanted me to run for city council. So when I did run, I started knocking on doors with the help of the Chisago County GOP, helping nonpartisan candidates run for office. And I've got a lot of help from Mark. I got a lot of help from the county, a lot of information. And I ended up knocking on doors, and lo and behold, I see my name going up in people's yards, on my yard signs. So when that happened, and incidentally, there were a couple times when I saw my name next to Trump's name, which was really pretty cool. So I started, I actually got a text from the mayor at that time, another council member. It was the mayor, and he asked, how many signs do you have? Because they really started to show up. And my response was, I hope I have enough. One day I came home from work, and one of my yard signs was thrown back in my yard. So somebody was upset about something. I later come to find that the same 2 city council members who wanted me to run were now going door to door, following me around, going doors with my sign up there, and trying to convince people to take them down. They were successful on 2, as far as I know. One, she put it back in her garage. I had to, she had a question. I responded to her. It was, it was amicable. The other person threw her sign back in my yard. So the same 2 people who in 2019 wanted me to come onto the city council through the back door were a little bit upset that I had the assistance and the help and the training to realize that's not the way you get into government. You go to the front door. You go to people's front doors. They were not happy about that at all. This has been my first year on the city council. The meetings no longer last just 30 minutes. They're a little bit longer. We've had one council member walk out, and then she was convinced to come back. So she was gone for 2 months. She actually quit. She resigned. But the mayor called her back because he needed her. We have 2 investigations going on, one at the state level, one at the city level. We hired an investigator for an gender discrimination and hostile workplace environment. None of the, and the gender discrimination and hostile workplace was the city worker versus a public official. I'm not the public official. If you ask them, I'm responsible for all this. The people put me in. The people made this decision. I'm just the guy who's asking questions now. That's all I'm doing. And it's shining a light on what's really going on. There are 2 major things, I guess, that I've learned. One is I have to, for me personally, it's about being comfortably uncomfortable. I was not comfortable knocking on people's doors. I am not comfortable sitting in city council meetings like that up there. I am not comfortable leaving city council meetings constantly being outvoted 4-1, 4-1, 4-1. Everybody know who the one is, right? Some of you probably weren't comfortable coming here tonight. This is a little uncomfortable. But that's what we have to do. We have to go, patriotism is being redefined. We are the patriots. We are the ones, this is the battleground. This is where it all started, and we have to take it back. The other thing, I know Rick talked about the gateway, the caucus being the gateway to the political process. There's another gateway out there. It's called complacency, and it is the gateway to corruption. We have to shut that gate. That's why you're here. That's why we all need you here.
Troy.
That's my story.
So the entire reason, the 30-minute council meetings were because there's absolutely no conversation in public. So all decisions have been made without any public exposure. And even worse, right, what we've seen in all levels of government, I don't care, cities, counties, towns, certainly school boards right now, when you do show up, that we've allowed them for the last 20 years to develop policies to inhibit your voice even when you do show up. And the only reason they're able to do that is they just count on you being uninformed of what your rights are. And so one of the things that I think is important is supporting your local candidate in the training that we have to bring forth, whether it be a school board or whatever. You're not there to serve the school board or the superintendent. You're there to serve the citizens. Same with the city council position. You need to bring that voice and the representation of the city. You're not run by the city administrator. Who's the most important, most powerful person in cities and counties who's not elected? See? County administrator and the city administrators. And so, but they're hired by those that are elected. But they are really the most powerful. And so they count on, and you as county members or any elected official, we count on them being truthful and honest to us. And I can tell you that we're probably further from that today than ever in the history of mankind. I argue that we need to provide that training for the candidates to understand and empower you what your roles and opportunities are. Because my motto has been held true forever. What they willfully withhold is more damaging than the lies they tell us. The information they withhold removes your ability to apply the context of the lies that they put forth. Think about what we're doing today in the Walls administration everywhere. It happens at the school board level. Superintendents appear to run and dictate because the people who are elected on the school boards just count on the staff and that they're friends. You can develop friendly relationships, but we're not friends. This is a parent-sibling relationship. You elected the parent, and they report to you. But if you allow it to continue, and I think that's where Troy's at, he showed up. Interesting is their miscalculation. They were supportive of Troy. Did they wonder if they believed he had a different political view? And or that if they could bring him in, he'd be compliant.
And the one thing I wanted to mention is, or ask you, which party do you think these two council members were from?
Yeah.
Actually, one was a Republican and one was a Democrat.
Yeah.
So they teamed up to go around and try and have my campaign signs turned down. The one thing I want to say is this is not so much right versus left. This is right versus wrong.
Yep.
Right? Right. And that's why we need to show up. We do have people, I know I mentioned there weren't many people in the chamber when I went. I was the only one, but we do have people showing up now. We actually started a community group, basically coming off of my candidacy. We meet once a month. We make sure that people are there in the chamber watching what's going on. We are recording the meetings. And we're putting them up on YouTube. And that's where all this investigation and everything that I have going, that I don't have going on, but that is going on in the city council, it's gotten a lot of attention. But all of this was going on prior to me being there. You know, this is not, I didn't cause this. The people who put me there for a reason. And I believe providentially, it was to expose what has been going on for a long time. Yes, thank you.
When you say you are recording who, the city or the public?
We actually, right now, the group that I belong to, we have a group, Conservative Neighbors Now is what it's called, but they are bringing in their own recording. They're recording it on a cell phone.
And Troy,
right
for people remotely, the question was, who are you recording? So that was your answer.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, we're recording the city council, the meeting. The actual meeting is being recorded.
Yep, and I think that's what you need to do, because what we see all the times, I think Dieta and those guys have seen, the other growing element in government is we have public records policies across the board, right? We have a Freedom of Information Act at the federal level, and there's a state data practices and policy. The fastest growing complaint that we have today is our government is failing to respond to those statutory requirements to provide the data. We see it every day, right? You see it at the federal level, and tell you every day at the state level. Rarely do we, as your representative, as a state legislator member, put a request into the state agencies for data, and we don't get it. If they respond, and then when they do respond, you know, to be able to validate the information they provide is very difficult. Most of the time, they just don't respond to you. And so, number one growing request in that area. In Minnesota, you have an administrative law judge, you have Office of Legislative Auditor. It's the fastest growing entity. And before Rick, I'll give you that one. The other thing that Troy, I think a really important piece that Troy covered is his comfort level going out into the door. And I can tell you from my perspective, I had the same thing, Troy. And when you got to the point where, when you see your first sign out there and you didn't expect it, it's actually really cool because you think about, well, they support you. Signs don't win elections. They're really important, though. People want to be with winners. And so the more you have out there, make them sweat a little bit. But growing back into your own voice, you know what your convictions are, right? But when you're a candidate, it really changes. Supporting a candidate, I've been doing that for a long time. But boy, when you're the candidate, it really does change. You know what your convictions are. We got a candidate right here. And so, but going out and knocking the doors, doing parades, putting yourself in that uncomfortable position. Because at the end of the day, you're not going to get everybody's vote, and some people will be upset with you. You have to build that skill set to be able to handle any interaction. Because you might only be simple and brief ones, but you do get through it. But when you garnish that power back, look what the candidate he's become. He just gave a great speech about what's real. Troy is just like everybody else, and every one of you have the same opportunity. So if you see somebody like Troy or you've shown up, do it. Just showing up matters. He showed up and then he become, and by the way, he showed up and what did they assume? They assumed he was running for office. Right. That should never be the case. You guys should be there regularly. And he educated himself. Then he became really dangerous in a positive way because he could influence her to try and hold them accountable. That's what it's all about. It's a model available to everywhere. You've seen it. We've seen all over the place. School board members are quitting. Your council member quit. And we're seeing it. So make them uncomfortable, show up, and you have the power. I think you had a question right here. Yep.
I actually think they started asking you if you were going to run to see if you were going to be competition, because that's what happens at every county commissioner office. They want to know who you are, where do you live. But my question for you is, do you debate and make decisions at the city council level in front of people at the meetings? Because where I'm from, all the decisions are made at the task force level. And my now county commissioner, who used to be my mayor, said, if you really want to know what's going on, you better get in a task force because they make all the decisions. And once it's passed up to us, we just automatically pass it because we feel it's been vetted by the community. And that's not true, because what they do is bring in consultants, like our city brought in consultants from like the people who designed St. Cloud and what's going on up there. And they literally use the Delphi technique on anybody who mentions anything. Like I mentioned private property 5 times at a task force, and he totally Delphi'd me in front of everybody, trying to get complete compliance and to have nobody else ever stand up and say anything.
My word is transparency. That's my trigger word. That was the word that sent that council member out. You know, she quit for, it was just about being transparent. I think it was on a purchase agreement or something. At Taylor's Falls, things are a little bit smaller, I think. But yes, the decisions are made already. The decisions are already made.
But you've stretched the conversation to now you're
Right.
at least having the conversation prior to the vote.
Right, right. And that's where the 4-to-1s come from, don't they? Because that's what happens. But it's like I said, it goes back to the corruption, and I challenge all of you, no matter what town you're in, start showing up. And you have to show up more than once. You'll see a pattern. You'll see the personalities come forth. You'll see what's going on. And you will start to follow your conscience. People ask me, what are you looking for? Why did you do this? Right now, after a year being in it, I'm just looking for a conscience. Somebody show me a conscience.
Rick?
So one of the key elements that you can look for in city council meetings commissioner meetings is if you ever see, and so I'm an originalist parliamentarian, means nothing to you guys, but I like to have things out in the public. And the way that you can actually see the number one thing that you look for is the word consent agenda.
Yeah.
If you see the word consent agenda, I will guarantee you 100% of the time, they're absolutely violating open meeting law in the state of Minnesota. It also is a tool, just as Senator Koran has pointed out, it is the number one tool to destroy debate, public input, and as Terry has alluded to, they try to push these into task force or into other meetings that are away from public purview. So this is why we need public input today to remove all of these consent agendas. And you should be going through every single agenda item to review it. When I was the mayor for the city of St. Bonifacius, I got rid of that immediately because I wanted to make sure that the people, especially the Lake Minnetonka Cable Commission that would come in and record the meetings, anybody who was at home could understand each agenda item, and I would literally go through and describe it. So after I was sworn in, I was never sworn at. That should be the goal.
Right.
No,
Yeah.
it's
And you do have an opportunity, I do have an opportunity to poll. This thing is huge, though. I mean, the influence they have is huge. I have already sensed connections not only with the auditor, but the city attorney, the county commissions, how connected this is. These people, I'm sorry, the council members that were there and are still there have been there for 15 to 20 years. So imagine what can be done in that time. And it has been done. And that's what I say, even no matter where you're at, what town you're at, go check it out and just find out what's going on, because you will make them uncomfortable. Yes.
Imagine what's been done in that short time you've been there. So this gentleman had a question. Here, I got the mic for you.
Me? Yep. Okay, on the open meeting law, I'm very well versed in it, and I see it all the time, the violations that occur, especially going into closed sessions. Are you a kind of guy that will try to hold your council and administration to strict compliance with that? Or do you see it kind of just being ignored? The closed sessions are probably the most important because everyone has to be recorded for the public's review other than attorney-client privilege, which they abuse tremendously everywhere I've been involved in. And it's a terrible thing, and it's really hard to get anybody. The really only accountability is a local newspaper, and they just have no interest in it. And they call themselves watchdogs, and they're as far from a watchdog as a caterpillar on a sidewalk in the middle of summer. They don't watch anything. Right. And I've just seen this for 20 plus years. And I mean, I guess my question to you is, has that been an issue for you with Taylor's Falls?
Yes, it has. What I think I'm dealing with is serial meetings, basically. I think the other one is daisy chain or something, but yeah, right, yeah. It's basically emails. Here's the catch. Because I ran as a candidate not to plug in to the Old Boys Network, and I am sitting up there as a candidate committed to the people who voted for me not to plug into the Old Boys Network. I'm not plugged into the Old Boys Network, and it's still going on. So my responsibility this time, do whatever I can, helping my community to get other people run. We need more people, right? We need more people. Just take the shots, but do whatever I can to expose, shed light on what's going on. So I do bring up transparency. I do pull things off the consent agenda. I do ask questions. Sometimes I ask a question and very critical about something. I did, we were transferring funds from one account to another. I'll make it quick. But at the end of this year, we will have 67% of our budget in the general fund. The auditors have already warned us, that's not a good idea. That doesn't look good. That looks like a slush fund. I brought it up. I questioned it. I still voted for the transfer, but I brought it out into the open. We've hired superintendents, public works superintendents, same thing. A lot of 4-to-1. That's an uncomfortable situation. You're in a town of 1,100 people, and you just voted against hiring back a public works superintendent that just retired 30, 60 days ago. And you're starting to wonder, was this pre-planned? Yeah, it was. It was.
Yep, excellent. One more question.
Have you ever considered with these daisy chain and that type of email, asking for an advisory opinion from the Department, the State Department Administrator Commissioner for open meeting law advisory opinion? I mean, I've done this myself. It's a $200 charge to get an advisory opinion on open meeting law. It doesn't give any weight other than in court. They give deference to that opinion in court.
Right. I would, but it's already going on. I mean, the request to the department, Minnesota department, a little bit about this case. Some of this went to the state of Minnesota, and some of it was an investigator hired. So, but the violations to the open meeting law are through the roof. I mean, it's just obvious, but they are being reported.
Yeah.
And then we do have people putting in data requests on a regular basis where they were not before.
Yep, and I've seen at that level, and I think you're speaking of one of the opportunities for the ALJ, Administrative Law Judge, to act on those and to provide some legal opinion without officially going to court. They report to us in state government, and so I serve on the state government committee as well. And interestingly enough, the ALJ, the number one request for the ALJ today is public data requests. And so they changed the buy-in to that. It's $1,000 for that process. You just described one. Most of them are $200 except for the public data requests. And so they did it again to protect the state agencies. The Office of the Legislative Auditor, their number one growing request to get a couple hundred a year is because agencies failed to follow state law in public disclosure of data that's requested on a continuous basis. On your position of data privacy, I've seen it at a township. That's what brought me to swap out my township. We had a room full in my area. If you're Chisago County, there's a big power plant battle. And so I was in the middle of it because I don't like all my elected officials lying to us. And it was interesting, 500 people there. I saw a township board when we asked them for the data of their communications when they testified in favor of a power plant a year ago that they claimed today they knew nothing about. We asked them for all communications with their elected officials for the prior year. One township supervisor looked over at the other and said, I make a motion to abolish our Data Privacy Act. Do I have a second? Yes. I have a second. Second. Vote. All in favor? Aye. And they said, your request is null and void. I had 500 people there. That's how emboldened they are. So they don't exist anymore. But that is correct. But they had their own Data Privacy Act, which was voted in. It mirrored, right? It didn't cover township, but it mirrored most of the state data privacy and disclosure. And literally on the spot, 500 residents, our residents. So now they don't exist. We have a 5-member board instead of a 3-member board, and we also converted that township election. By the way, anybody here know when township elections are? Yeah, right. Okay, 2 of you. Most don't know. And so you want to see the lowest participating election in the entire state is township elections. And so we changed the election, and you have the power to do that. We changed the election to general election. I had all 3 board members at the time come up and argue that it's not good to have more people participate in the election process. They're uninformed. They just meant we would prefer your opinion to be silent. So, question?
I have a question. It's probably way off the topic, but you know, when we vote for judges, you know, I'd like to get some conservative judges in there that are making decisions that favor what my beliefs are. I go in on a ballot, I have no idea who they are. The only way I found out was to ask a former judge, who was a friend of mine, and say, who are these people that are, and we don't even know the candidates. Is there a way that our state could give us?
Yeah, great question on judges. So in 2016, we actually had, as part of the Minnesota GOP, we actually had one arm of it that did judge endorsements. And not only endorsements, but just let's look at their voting record. Let's vet them so we can provide the education opportunity. What the heck is on page 2 of that ballot? Believe me, that's why I ran for the state party chair. Because when I mean we need to bring all elected office into purview, I mean all of them. Judges as well. They all run unopposed. Remember, because the game is they never retire. So they never go through the election cycle. They retire when it's convenient so the governor can appoint some radical judge. I'm sorry, somebody who shares their views. And they become permanent and then, so the next election, but nobody pays any attention. I thought one was great up in I think, CD7, or I'm sorry, Congressional District 7 up in the Duluth area. Radical judge, right? Although that defines most of them. We could take them out with a postcard campaign. You know, we could take out, in most of them, in that territory, they had 36,000 votes. 1,000 people voted for that uncontested judge. We do need to do a better job. I would like to see this year we wipe out a couple of them. A $1,000 fundraising campaign, and we could mail 5,000 postcards to our strongest conservative voters and do a write-in and wipe one of them out. We're going to have a candidate that can stand up though and run. So, but completely agree. GOP is going through rebuilding. Judges are important. Every single office has to be in our purview. But there are things we can do locally, right? So BPOUs, we can bring judges in. If we're not getting what we need at the higher level, we can bring them in at the local level, and we have to do that. So.
Okay, just a quick comment.
Yep.
So, do you want to go into a time of Q&A, or?
I think we are.
Absolutely. Okay, just so you all know, we're shifting gears here. I
Yep.
want to thank Troy very much for taking his
yes.
time to come out here today. Thank you. Okay, before we shift gears, I wanted to mention all of this talk about local involvement, going to your meetings, getting to know your elected officials and such. There is an organization is working statewide to create groups like what Troy has created just in his own community. And if you want to get in touch with a group that may already be in your county, you can go to Restore Minnesota, and it's called restoremn.org. And they're developing community groups, and it says Restore Minnesota exists to promote biblical citizenship that educates, equips, empowers, and encourages Holy Spirit-led engagement in order to restore righteousness in Minnesota, county by county, community by community, family by family, through spiritual and civic transformation based on the gospel of Jesus Christ. And through that organization, you're able to tap into people who have the know-with-all within the political system, so that you can ask advice and get some questions answered. And then you can attend these meetings with a group of people rather than just by yourself, although that's very effective in Troy's instance. So if you want to tap into that, that's restoremn.org. And it is very important. We here have been involved in attending our city council meetings and our county meetings and township meetings, that you do show up so that you do see what's going on. But it's also important for you to engage with them and, in a respectful manner, and just get to know them so that you're able to have a dialogue with them. Because a lot of times they're your community members, and once you start sharing your views with them, and you can work together on a lot of things. It's not always against. One question before I sit down. Could you just let people know how, when they want to become a delegate, you show up at caucus, you want to be a delegate so that you can be part of that small group of people with influence. How do you sell yourself? Like, how do you give your campaign speech? Like, give some tips on that. Because I've put my hand up and I've meekishly explained why I wanted to be a delegate. I've never been elected because I was like, well, I didn't really know what I was doing, and they could see that. So that's why we want you to have a more confident campaign message. So if you
Deanne, I think Rick highlighted it early. I think the one thing that you can do where you're most comfortable in is if you have 6 friends that live in your community, bring them. They are your votes. And again, tell them, if you show up for nothing else, you show up and you cast your vote for me. That is one thing.
Yes, good.
Sorry, and so that you need to do it. And I would argue, bring 12 people to solidify. And if you have other delegates, bring, let them know who that you're trying to support there. So I would do that. But the other thing, remember, it's just your neighbors. It really is. And so you've gotten, sorry, you're here because you want to be involved and you want to play in the process. And I would argue probably some of the best things is, Dieta, what you just talked about. I've gotten involved already, and I want to get involved at a different level. In this, I can't think of a better place to do it. Because most in there will have said, wow, you've actually gone to another meeting at a city, township, or school board. That'll put you, hell, that puts you at the elite status. But I would just say that's all it is. Don't try to be somebody you're not. I know public speaking, that's what everybody's probably heard my speech. The toughest thing about caucus is its definition. Nobody knows what the heck it is, right? Just gathering your neighbors. We have the platform conversation. And if you got a great idea, you get to speak publicly. Wow, that's not something that people get say about. But it's just your neighbors. It's just a gathering of your neighbors to talk about all things political. And so I would say don't overthink it. But if you do have where you've decided to get involved, that's what I would highlight. And you see this as a great opportunity. Some of them, I'm thinking in Sandy County, I think we had 2 or 3 precincts that didn't have anybody show up. Guess who gets to be delegate then? The people who show up.
And also be honest too. Be yourself.
Yeah.
And you don't have to really make up a long speech, but just say, I want to get involved and I want to do X, Y, and Z. And so people will most of the people are going to be like, yeah, I don't want to do that. I'll vote for her.
Rick, we got a question over here.
No, my question goes back to the judges, and with regards to putting it on the resolution ballots at the caucus. Is that something that you advise us to do, asking for that platform transparency, trigger word, with judges that are running in your area?
Yes, you can absolutely do that. And Senator Koran is right. There's kind of a fledgling judicial district group as well. And typically what happens in the state of Minnesota, at least in the past, correct me if I'm wrong here, but any delegate that is selected to the next level from the caucuses are automatically members of the judicial districts.
Yeah. And did you have another question?
We are currently doing petitions to get rid of the Dominion voting machines. So I would like to, when I go to caucus, I want to put this on my caucus documentation to remove the voting machines, and I would appreciate it if everybody else would do the same. The other thing is we're going to continue doing petitions out the hallway when we're done here if you haven't signed up. We're trying to go to our county auditors, so it's per county, to get rid of Dominion machines and like machines out of our counties. So.
Great, thank you. Yep. And Dominion are in 6 counties. And Rick, part of those legislative agendas, I mean, there's 25 of the things. One of the things that we, thanks for bringing that up, it's all important to look at every facet of it. And I think our state party chair has said the one thing we have statutory authority to do, interesting, it's pretty limited, but the majors, any party with major party status has the ability to go right and view the source code and the equipment. But Rick, what's the estimate on that?
It's well, I actually did the estimate.
Over $1.5 million.
Yeah, so it's more than 10. So it's actually about $2 million to be able to review the source code of 2 of the vendors. There's 3 vendors in the state of Minnesota.
Yep. Yeah, and so, but it is important. And then the other part about kind of that resolution process and why, or the resolution moves into party platform, we have a whole host of those things that ultimately are in there. But the ability to measure the success of it over time is kind of diminished. And the one thing it leaves out is the thing that we didn't cover. We spent, again, serving on the committee, we've stopped for the last 5 years probably 25 horrible, think about it, what's the terrible bill to destroy elections? HF2? What's the federal, whatever the one is
For the People's Act.
Federalize the elections? HR1.
Yep.
Every single one of those things, except for maybe pets voting, has been included in the legislative platform for the governor, secretary of state, and the House in the last 5 years that I've served. And we've stopped every single one of them. And so having a majority, we have it by a one vote. It matters. But what I don't think we sell the value of what we have accomplished in stopping the threat and the assault. Would we like to make it better? Oh, yes. Because the only way you could be more frustrated is to get elected. To be in there and sit and watch them people lie to you, by the face and call you a racist because you want a free, fair, and open election process for only those eligible to vote. Every day we stop that, but I also think we undersell the value of what we've stopped. We probably stopped not just in tax increases, but probably 40 to 50 billion reasons a year, a legislative session to not live or do business in Minnesota. When you look at the regulatory piece and the direct taxes that they want, we'll be talking about getting rid of taxation on the rest of Social Security. Governor, only up until now, both Governor Dayton and Walz said, no, we want to continue to tax our elderly, so they leave Minnesota. We undersell that value, and that's kind of why I'd like to change the conversation at caucus, that we actually give you kind of our own scorecard. At least, what have we done? What have we accomplished? So you at least see what it is. Because there's no other time that you get it. You get a haphazard, right, depending on the sources that you get to. But we don't even do that for the own people who show up at our Republican caucus, which makes you an elite. If you just show up and you can spell caucus, it really makes you part of a very small group.
It's so true, and those of you that attend caucus know that folks like him stopped the Democratic move. That whole police reform thing that would have hurt all of your police departments. Yeah, they prevented that from completely collapsing. Even the folks in Minneapolis looked at the BLM movement and all of that, and in the last 2021 election, looked at them and said, yeah, you're all a different kind of crazy. We're keeping our police.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Question?
Not really a question.
Oh, that's right.
A comment about the Restore Minnesota website. If you go there, don't expect to be able to find your group. You have to click on contact us and send an email saying where you live, why you want to be connected, and then they'll respond to you with where your local cat group is.
In Sherburne and Wright County right now, there's a group that meets in Elk River for Sherburne County and in Buffalo for Wright County.
Yep, and I think that the good news, Deanna, you covered, that organization is run, and I think they're still growing in resources and building those things out. I think they're in 11 counties now, so they have, you just said the acronym. Right. Community Action Team. But it's a community action teams, but they are really doing, this area, heck, you started here, and really, Deanna and those guys and everybody through here, this organization done a great job. But they're everywhere, and there's so many things that take volunteers to go through. I don't care whether it's working on a local election. They're doing a heck of a lot of the canvassing for the last elections, and so it's wonderful. And I can tell you, as a legislator, under the guise of Isaiah, there's organizations that are full-time campaigning at the legislature and getting involved in every single progressive Democrat crazy idea and lobbying under the guise of religion. At the legislature lobbying, you have to show up because they are there every single day. It's disgusting.
I want to thank you guys for doing this. I learned a lot today, but please, if you get another opportunity to do caucus training through other candidates, please take advantage of that. I did one through Gazelka's team, and I learned that Gazelka has a special commitment and affinity to the LGBT community because of his daughter, and he also made a point of saying that, revealing Scott Jensen for being pro red flag gun confiscation laws and runoff voting, which I don't support either one of them. But I'd like you to also go through some of the resolution places, because on caucus night we get to submit resolution, and cchfreedom.org, it's Concerned Citizens for Health Freedom.org. If you have any questions on health freedom, Twyla Braze has an amazing website. She also has a list of doctors in the wedge that are independent and not government run.
Yeah, you left, there's lots of good resources there, and that's one of the things you guys are seeing today in the healthcare system and this whole treatment of COVID is, what's changed? Who was our entry into the healthcare system 20 years ago? It was your primary medical doctor. They don't exist anymore. And so what's changed and what you don't see is those doctors now all work for the hospital. Over 70% of them work for the hospital. And so through the treatment protocols, the hospital dictates what you can and can't do. They're no longer your advocate. at all. And I would argue, and I now challenge them every day. They've acquiesced. I get their number one customer is a vindictive tyrant, meaning our state government and federal government. But they've acquiesced to the destruction, the very destruction of their own business model and community, and made health access unavailable to the average hardworking U.S. citizen. Those of us who are paying for it. And I think they did it systematically to make sure that you get used to what is in their desire is to bring government-run health care. We don't have to ask what it looks like. We don't. So when you look at it, because and I'll make my plug. All of the above, check all the above. So I had to go into the doctor. Guys don't go in unless it's spurting or bent the other way. And so, right, we don't. But I had an ear infection, so I had to get there. But I go as a legislator, I always try to take the route and think about what about the 80-year-old person or what about the person that doesn't have a health advocate. So I went online, I'm a mHealth, Fairview, whatever. And so I went in there and it was difficult. I know I had an ear infection, some point. And so I had to see a doctor. You could hardly get through to get a doctor appointment online because they don't want to, calling is useless because you don't call your doctor's office anymore. It's some call center. And so I got through because I wanted to see because they're pushing everybody there. It took me forever to get a doctor appointment. I got it. It was very limited. Our schedules are busy, so I took it. So I thought, wow, they sent you an email update? Great. Check in early. Mr. Koran, you didn't update your profile. Really? No. Guess what your profile that now they've added? What's your gender assigned at birth? Now you can only do drop-down menus, and I'm telling every one of you, every day you've participated in giving them data that they've used against and discriminated against you, and will continue to discriminate against you. And so I said, I'm going to do it. So I went and made sure to update it. So you can only do drop-downs. You can only do drop-downs, right? So predetermined outcome. So I no longer know what my gender was assigned at birth because I didn't get to ask them. Then they went into, what's your gender identity? Uncertain at this time. Because I want to be fluid. So then it was sexual orientation. They didn't have none of your damn business, but I did fill something out there, uncertain or undetermined at this time.
I would have done open.
Yeah.
Look at me, I'm pretty desperate.
It wasn't an option.
Somebody married me, though.
So, and they wouldn't let me put my phone number in either. So, but the reason I say it, so I went through it, and so then we got into race. They didn't have pasty people, and they didn't have Irish. They didn't have Irish. They didn't have us lumped into European and whatever. So I am now, in the healthcare system, I am Alaskan Native, Native American, Black, and Hispanic, because I felt a little spicy that day. My ethnicity is Hmong, because again I couldn't find German Irish. My preferred language is Farsi. And my religion is Native American. I didn't know Native American was a religion. I actually didn't. So the reason I say that is think about every single time that you've been asked that question. What did you do? You complied. And so every single one of you is as Native Americans as Elizabeth Warren. They used it for personal and political gain, and now more than ever, they're using it to discriminate against you selectively. And if we acquiesce and continue to acquiesce, we're going to have 150 genders, whatever the heck that is, outside. For you science deniers, we're going to have 150 genders. But think about it. Every single time we've given them that information that they used against us. Look at our college system. We're discriminating against Asians. They're too smart. Right? They're not considered a minority because minorities are only important to the racists, right? Or the color of your skin or whatever. We've allowed them to do it. And if you think they're not going to continue to do it to you, you're wrong. And so we have to fight back. So I'm for check all the above. You know what? Never give them, dilute it. We have to dilute it to the point where it becomes useless and it no longer is a tool they can use against us. It sounds silly, but that's really what they're doing with it. In the COVID, think about the greatest concern. Our government is so concerned about you. If you're special, and they get to determine who special is. On the COVID vaccine locator, remember when it was early on, they put I think they called it the vaccine connector or whatever it was. They had 7 pages trying to determine, ask your ethnicity in 3 different ways, your gender in multiple different ways. Think about an 82-year-old woman that's got to go down there, an 82-year-old, anybody, 82-year-old. You go in and fill out this garbage, and we know, because they wouldn't disclose it. They use that information to discriminate against them. So if they were 80, and think about this, is over 65 should have been the highest priority to get a vaccine if you choose. They said, well, that's true, except for we've got other special populations that we're pandering to politically that we'd rather give them the vaccine instead of everybody over 65, regardless of race, skin color, whatever. They use it every day, and government's doing it at a level that you could never dream of. They've written every single thing, rewritten every word, every document that you see, all about and based on information that we voluntarily give them. So I would ask you support and check all the above. Deanna.
Okay, so when you get to caucus and you check in and all of that, right away you're going to be electing positions. So you have precinct chair, vice chair, secretary, yada yada. So can you guys talk about which one of these positions do we, the participants, sign up for? Which ones are already there? And, what do those positions look like if we were to volunteer to be them?
So it varies across the spectrum. In most precincts, all the positions are wide open. You might have the convener that everybody just looks at, well, you've got the agenda and you've got the script and you've already got all the packets, you be the chair. Because the rest of us are just gonna coast and we're here just either for resolutions or I wanna be a delegate. So the most important thing that you really wanna run for, if you wanna move up within the political party and even at the precinct level, to help candidates like Senator Koran find election judges, judges within the state court system, you wanna be a delegate. Because that delegate at that BPOU level automatically gets you into the door. That's the first primary thing that you want to do, because there, once you're in the BPOU, Senator Koran is absolutely right. Depending on the BPOU, that's where the committee structure starts for the organization of the local grassroots party. Here's part of the interesting thing. Most people in the state of Minnesota think that the Republican Party is like this huge professional organization. It's a lie. Yeah. There's literally the 2 elected people. There's a state executive committee, and maybe at times there might be 1 employee, and then during a presidential election, you might get 8 additional. Right. Other than that, the Republicans have to rely on the donations from activists like you throughout the year just to even pay that 1 employee, and if they don't get enough money, they're gone. So
we are the party.
Right. It is grassroots based. So he's exactly right that it is based upon the BPOU's success at the local level, where you, coming into the precinct caucuses, can walk in that front door, join all of these committees as a delegate to help candidates to get out there. And also some of these BPOUs do become more active and potentially have some of their members provide testimony down at the legislative hearings that are available.
Yeah, and so Deanna, when you come in, Rick just said, the person, there might be a predefined convener. The convener is this person going to call the meeting together. Don't assume they know any more, and they likely haven't even read the packet that they've received in their hand. Right. I would argue, this is the Chisago counties. It's more detail than I like, but it's a really good, just to read through it. Take that lead position. Right? Be comfortable enough, take the lead, say, hey, we're going to figure it out. Most people are going to say, what, do you know what to do? Do you know what to do? No. Because in many cases, there isn't somebody that knows what Rick knows or knows what I know or that's been there for 8 years. I would argue, even if they've been for 8 years, it doesn't mean they were leading it. But step up and say, I'm going to do it. Read through this. It'll tell you what you need to do. No matter how they run your precinct caucus, I think it will be a good outline. You'll be comforted to know what are the tasks that you need to accomplish. Right. One, you'll learn some of the dialogue, and then you'll be able to figure that out. Again, I would read through this. Deanna will email it to everybody who's here. And in its detail, it literally gives the convener a script. You can read this out. What's a Republican Party? What's the business side of it? So yeah, it's really helpful. But you want to become a delegate or an alternate. The alternate, in most cases, alternate seats are not all filled. And in most cases, the delegates don't all show up for every convention opportunity that exists. The cycle is 2 years, so you become that alternate, or the delegate is 2 years till we reelect in the 2 years from now. But that really gets you the participation and the opportunity to vote. And then you can ascend to higher levels of delegates.
And I hate to tell you a dirty little secret. In St. Bonnie, we had 16 delegate seats available one year. 3 of us ran for delegates. The rest of the delegation didn't really want to commit, and so they registered as alternates, even though they were going to end up serving anyways.
Right. Yeah. So, and it's some of the title, but here I would argue. You know why I think people do that? I think they do that because, and many will say you have an obligation. You have an obligation to do 6 hours here, whatever. Right. Get over that. You have an opportunity to participate at any level. Again, if you don't want to vote or be that front member leading the charge, but you want to be somebody that's behind the scene, providing critical resources, showing up to a committee, taking up, following the school board, looking up a policy, right? Doing that data research, all that matters. And that's why I'm always, we got to make a home for everybody. I don't care what role you want to play. We've got to figure out how we make you comfortable and make that opportunity true there. But I've been there. I think we've removed obligation from most of the Chisago County stuff because I get to have that conversation with them.
Yes.
It's really not obligation. It is your opportunity, your true opportunity.
And for those of you that are watching online, you can actually go to the MNGOP's website and you can actually click on the caucus tab, and they actually have the full script there for the conveners. So all the information is there, so you can actually arm yourself before attending the convention, or sorry, the caucus, and you'll have all the information already there at hand.
Yep.
And I just want to add, we'll post that to our website. So if you wanted to go to www.wordoflifemn.org/faith and freedom, we'll put that on our website too. And anyone else who wants to ask questions, I'm going to put a mic up here. So just come over here and then stand in line, and then we can just have it speak it into the mic.
Very basic question. If once you're a delegate, can you still be an election judge or a poll challenger?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, and I think that one of the questions earlier, I think somebody asked that, if somebody's a county commissioner or a candidate for a delegate position is open to anybody that wants to profess their belief in the Republican values. That's it. That's it.
It's even lower than that. If you just want to support a candidate, that's all you need.
Yeah. But and it really is just your neighbors, right? It's that entry level. No questions?
I have another question. So do you need to be a delegate to be a member of your BPOU, or how do you join a BPOU if it is operating?
So a typical BPOU, you must be a delegate, but there are some in greater Minnesota that actually say that because they're so desperate for committee members, they will open up the committees and all the subcommittees to any registered voter within the district.
Yeah, I would agree. And for membership in those committees, typically in a BPOU, to head up a search, a candidate, recruitment or whatever, typically it's a delegate alternate. But each one of those are elected lead a committee or whatever, the task force, whatever they call it. But it's up to them to go, and they have the opportunity. In most cases, you would draw from the caucus list because it's the only communication. So just showing up to caucus should get you the BPOU's communications. So the email, it's important to provide the email, and they will send out the communications and when they have their meetings and whatever activities are going on. So you can be a participant of those. Again, some BPOUs are wide open all the time. What I like to see the trend is happening is there's some BPOUs that have one business meeting a month, and they're legit, right? There's some business side. Some people don't like the business side of it. So many of them are doing 2 meetings a month, kind of an unofficial, all things political, in a social hour environment, talking about how we activate and plan for some fundraisers or whatever in those things versus the business side. So I really like that, and it gives everybody the opportunity that either enjoys the business side of it, and it's legit, it's necessary to remain as an organization, but then also either blend it in with shrink the business side up and have some social activity where you get to have fun, bring in everybody you can, and talk about politics and talk about how you're going to activate.
And some of them even will do events at gun ranges, bowling alleys, restaurants,
Absolutely.
inviting candidates in for speeches, or even outside speakers that are here to educate. So it's pretty impressive what can be done.
I just have a comment regarding the guy that went to the, well, I went to a county commissioner meeting about a month ago, just invited by my cat group. And I'll be going to every one. I had no idea what they were talking about, but I was warmly accepted. There was only 2 of us there, 2 people that were from the community were there. Boy, I'll tell you what, you'll learn a lot if you go to those kind of commissioner meetings. And they welcomed us coming in, and they received us. So I just recommend for anybody that can to go to those meetings.
Yes, absolutely. And I would argue too. I think sir, what county do you live in? Sherburne. Great. That's great to hear that. When are their meetings? So Tuesdays and Thursdays mornings at 9 a.m. Now, I would argue that they're great and open only to a very limited group of people, non-working. And so I would argue that much like a Sandy County, and I don't care what county it is, they should have a day meeting and an evening meeting.
Yep.
I don't care what county it is. And if they're not, you should be showing up and telling them that you want that.
So
Because to do it at 9 a.m. really just inhibits your ability to show up. So
And participate and comment.
my son actually, when I went for the Wright County, he actually asked some questions, but the biggest comment that they get back, and don't believe this, is the fact that it would cost us more because we're going to be extending the hours for the employees that day. And it's like, no, you can shift the hours to not have to pay. So they're going to say it costs more. No, bull.
And if it did, it's their job to manage appropriately to make you accessible. They serve you.
Yeah, and if anything, like you said, I would say alternate. So this Tuesday they'll be if they want to do 9 o'clock, but then the next one, but then watch it because the agendas that they want to kind of hide out, they're going to be putting at the 9 o'clock. So keep that in mind. So when you sign up for at Caucus and registers, have you ever seen where they've ever had a crossover aspect or infiltrators? If the Democrat, there's some people that come in that try to dilute it. When you register that way, are you known not to be able to go on to the other Democrat side as well to do that same type of thing?
So it's not perfect, but what happens is that caucus night for both the Democrats and the Republicans are on the same night at the same time.
Right.
With the same time frames, statutory time frames.
Yes. Are there infiltrators? Absolutely.
So is that when we go Dems, like we did feds at January 6th, we just go Dems when we find them, or what? I mean, I don't know. It's just, okay.
You know what, I haven't heard, and sometimes it depends on how they run it. Sometimes the Republicans meet on one side of a community room and the Democrats meet on the other. And I haven't really seen it be an issue because it is at the same time. They have to get the same business done. So it's not something we worry about, because when you look at infiltrator, that could be just deemed as somebody who doesn't share your view but has Republican values, right? Because a delegate, you're going to see all the candidates. Rick was very clear. You'll see the gubernatorial candidates all recruiting. They're going to be, hey, come and be a delegate. You have to be a delegate here to ascend up to the other levels of delegate to be able to vote for them and the endorsement. So you're going to see a lot of that. You might see a lot of new faces because new candidates have brought new people in, and you may not know them, but you don't know what their views are until they start to act.
They might be the ones not saying under God on the pledge. Yeah.
Or tell you that it's offensive to have it on our dollar, our currency. Yeah. So.
The term Delphi method was used earlier, and Wikipedia was no help. Can you guys?
She's right behind you. She can define it.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you want.
She can define it, yeah.
All right, Terry, step up to the mic. Come on.
So using the Delphi technique is when you go to a meeting and they'll have, the consultants have a predetermined end to what the meeting will be. And if I was mentioning private property, we can't do that because that's private property. You can't confiscate that because it's private property. But if we partner with the state and the county, we could probably take it from them. So a Delphi technique is when the consultants point you out and make you, embarrass you, make sure that nobody wants to be on the same side as you, make sure that you are set apart, unliked, unappreciated and unintelligent. So they hammer on you until, and you can cry. I mean, they can be so hard unless you understand what they're doing to you, because they're setting you apart so you don't conflict with the predetermined outcome. That is the Delphi technique, and they do it all the time, a lot in those task forces. So what I would like to do is there any way you guys can help us get competition for some of these elected positions, such as county attorney and county auditor? Because when you meet with them and they're just like, there's no possible way there could be any fraud, or you give them felony fraud information and they refuse to act on it because there wasn't intent in their opinion or whatever, there needs to be some competition. And we can't just walk away and think these are untouchable offices.
And I have to disclose something here. I was actually witness in part to the meeting that she's talking about with Sherburne County. I'm responsible for a lot of the data that the counties are seeing when we go and work with community groups. We had presented for duplicate voters in Sherburne County. We had spoken with the sheriff, presented the evidence. He did his due diligence and reviewed the backgrounds of those. We also found, I believe it was 6 dead voters as well out of there. And so we asked for an analysis. We also presented multiple voters that voted out of PO boxes as well as a UPS store. And she's absolutely correct that we actually now have copies of the police investigation of 2 of the voters that were duplicate voters, and we have in there the description of what the defendants said in regards to the duplicate voting. And the attorney for the county decided that even though the person admitted to voting both absentee and in person, that they're not going to prosecute. They made that determination. So we have that as our documentation from Sherburne County, along with the attorney stating that she's not going to prosecute that. So that's part of why we need you guys to go out and meet your neighbors. We need to start recruiting. Senator Koran has even talked about, who goes into these hired positions at the school boards. Also, the city administrator, the county administrators. It's not conservatives asking their children to go into the public service community to go into these office holders. And I will submit to you, you're exactly right. It is disgusting that you will have a county administrator and a city administrator making north of $150,000 and superintendents north of $150,000 a year, saying that it will cost too much to show up at night. I'm sorry, but we pay you to do that. So how about this as a proposition? If you refuse to do that, we should cut your salary in half.
Sherburne, I think, I know that person, probably likely in the $180,000 range
Right.
for the county administrator. But Rick, your information, so in Chisago County, I think you had 16 voters identified as voting twice.
Correct.
And they sat down, our BPOU sat down, brought the information, building the relationship, had the conversation. I think they worked through all of it and came down to one legitimate one, and it was referred. So everywhere that whether they agree or not,
right,
the information has been validated. They try to dismiss you as they have there, and choosing not to prosecute is unacceptable. Now, what their outcome is, what the punishment should be, should they be, 5 years in prison? Don't know. But there certainly should be a consequence and the acknowledgement that it existed and a crime was committed.
Yep.
Because every single one of them, think about the Minnesota House, every single vote matters. We lost the House 4 seats by less than 750 votes.
Yep. And
Every
it's really,
vote matters.
And it's really significant because in some of my speeches, we talk about one of the races where there's a 30-vote separation. Mm-hmm. And in one of the in that election, there's actually 30 votes still today, ballots that were counted that are still not assigned to a voter today. And then we even have dystopian races in Dakota County where normally we wouldn't look at it. So Senator Koran is right. When you look at a race that's 850 ballots apart, but yet there's 1,927 ballots down in Dakota County for that race that still today aren't connected to a voter.
Yep. So the community action teams are doing the great work of doing that canvassing. And when people talk about what can be done, go find the community action team, work with Rick's team, take care of the canvas, and it will highlight and bring forth, and hopefully out of that, some lawsuits will come forth, and an awareness that it really does exist, and or our system is managed in such a way that doesn't build comfort in knowing our election system we can depend on, right? The trust.
Yep. Sherry, did you have a copy of the reports? Okay.
We got a question.
Two duplicate voters that were duplicate voters. We had 4 UPS store voters and 2 PO box voters, and the county attorney followed up on none of them.
Right.
So she chose not to charge.
Yeah, I think I heard from one of the leads in ours, they had, I think one of the schools, high schools, had 14 people registered that as their primary residence for this election cycle.
Right.
Wow. Yeah, and that's what the goal is. That's what they're doing. So substantiated, validated information, and to use every aspect to bring light to it.
Yep.
In the courts and otherwise.
So Midwest Swamp Watch is working with a lot of the local groups within each of the counties to strategize our next steps. Now that we have Crow Wing County in the mix, we're kind of in our maturity process for Sherburne to now flip towards communicating towards the county commissioners. Same thing in Washington County, Anoka, Isanti, and Chisago County. Dakota County will start that process of the county commissioners probably in the end of February, early March.
I just wanted to comment on the man that talked about if there would be infiltrators into the caucuses. In the 1980s, my husband and I were really involved in pro-life, and so these friends of ours said we need to have the Democratic Party platform changed. So we need to caucus with them and try and get it out of the grassroots. It was the most frustrating time of my entire life. I mean, we were delegates. We went all the way to state, and we walked out in protest because, I mean, we were dirt under their feet. The first time I ever felt welcome was the first time we started caucusing with the Republican Party. Yeah. Because, I mean, no one thought of anything like us. We were idiots.
Right.
So anyway, if there are people I mean, we were the people that were really Republicans trying to change the Democratic Party, but it can't be done.
They have a well-oiled machine, and opposing views need not apply.
Exactly, exactly, and you'll know that by the way they treat you.
Serve on the Senate floor with them.
My name's Tim Davis. My wife over there, she's gonna face a rhino this year, so anyway, so we've seen a lot of the dirty stuff going on, and that's really why she's running. Now, my question to you guys is, when you're at a caucus and you have other people coming in that you know are not part of your community, because, you know, when you live in an area for so long, you kind of get to know the people. How could you possibly check that out and kind of feel it out at caucus?
So it's up to you and your team there at caucus night to validate that, and you can certainly ask them for their driver's license and vote as a group whether or not you want to admit them in.
The people that attend, you vote based on those of you that are there. It's your caucus. It really is. And then the recording, the information, I think Dieta, I think you had a sign-up sheet. And I think as it comes to caucus, you have your communication list. And we do need a leader from each of the precincts to be able to kind of track that type of information. So, because that information will become very useful in the convention where we elect new leadership at the BPOUs a year from now. It'll be really important, first off, for the endorsing conventions for state reps and state Senate members. That'll be in the endorsing convention in March, maybe 1st of April, depending on the timing. But yeah, it is important that you know who they are and that we record who they are at the precinct caucus level on the night of the caucus.
My question is, did I hear you correctly Senator, when you said that we lost the House here in Minnesota by 300 and some votes?
750 votes.
750 votes.
Four races. One of those, I think Farnsworth was 30 votes.
Yes.
30 votes. And so people don't believe their vote matters. It really does matter. And having a majority does matter to be able to stop the crazy things that are coming. But yeah, 750. I think the prior year we lost it by, what was it? I think it was still less than 1,000.
It was.
I think it was still less than 1,000. So
That's amazing when you think
Yep.
of 87 counties in Minnesota. That's something like 8 votes per county.
Yep.
Yep.
That's
Yep.
amazing.
It really does matter. And that's why we highlight it, so people don't think it matters. It really does. And I think last year, I think between the House and the Senate, I think we had quite a few that were less than 10. And both ways, both Republican and Democrat, where the margin of victory was less than 10.
So my question is, for people who have not been to caucus before, have no idea what to expect. So our first experience at caucus, we showed up and there was, a small amount of people in our room. Not many of us knew what was going on. This was 2016, so everyone showed up.
Chaos year.
Not knowing what was going on. Okay, so we didn't have, do you call it a convener? I mean, who's the one that has the packet that you talked about?
The convener.
Okay, so our room didn't have a convener, so we had to elect a convener, and we elected a convener who reluctantly got elected. Go up there and do that.
The not it.
Exactly. And he literally just pulled out the papers and read the papers. He had no idea, he had never been there before. He had no idea what he was doing. He just literally read the papers and we just did what it said. So I'm saying all of you know a whole lot more than we knew that night.
Yep.
Go up there and read the papers. Of course they're going to elect you delegate because, you're going to look like you know what you're doing, but you got it all written in front of you.
Yeah, and again, go pull down off the MNGOP site and or
Yep.
the one that you're going to email
Yep.
out there. Just read through it.
Yeah, look through it. You'll be like, hey, I know what I'm doing.
The same number of steps are required, right, to do the formal business piece of it, and to do the resolutions, and to do the delegate votes. And like I said, some precincts didn't have any predefined convener, or some of them didn't have anybody that showed up.
Right. Well, like
You're
you
it.
said, the BPOUs aren't that big, so they
Right.
can't be in every single room. So they'll be in the bigger rooms, but not in the smaller rooms.
Right.
So then also, what are some other positions that we can volunteer for on caucus night? Besides the tellers that are counting the votes, there's also, is there anything else?
Yes, there's the secretary that you will be voting for. So the person that's there to kind of fill out the worksheet of the night, as well as responsible for making sure that everybody registered.
Right.
That's their job. And then the tellers that just count. And some caucuses, they may actually do a deputy chair. And some of the caucuses will say, you know what, because you led the meeting tonight and you were the secretary, we're going to make you automatic delegates.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And then then the last thing we can sign up for is to be a delegate. And you have so many delegates per room, right?
Yep.
And then once you fill those, then you get alternates.
Yep.
And there's so many per room.
Correct.
So that you can
Equal
show up.
number of delegates or alternates for each delegate.
Yep.
Right. And their job is to fill in case the delegate can't show up to perform its duties.
Right, and they're by order. So if you have a delegate that's unable to attend, whoever your first alternate is the first one that's seated as a delegate during a vacancy.
Okay.
So they're ranked at that time, and then that way you know where you're at on that pecking order, on who doesn't show up, who gets the first phone call.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Voted for per district, rather, did you mean district when you said per room? Because each district is put into a room if they're at a school building?
Yes.
That was my
Yeah,
experience.
each precinct is a separate little group.
And yeah, that's what I thought. But the other question I had, Rick, was I personally work at the Sherburne County Government Center, so I felt really angry when you shared that story about the fraudulent voters, and who we both know is this local county attorney.
Yep.
Why would she not prosecute fraudulent, well, persecute them first and then prosecute fraudulent voters? I mean, that makes me feel angry, and I love her with all my heart.
Yep, so that's,
Yeah.
that'll be the next step where, now that we have the evidence, we're gonna, now that we have the confidence of the evidence, now we can start attending some of the commissioner meetings to ask them and ask her publicly.
And, well, and I would be letters to the editor, all of the above. Once you get that proof, letters to the editor. Everybody needs to know. Because every one of those vote matters, and every fraudulent vote discounts our legal votes.
Right, and so I know some people are disappointed that we didn't get the prosecution right there and then, but see, this is where we have to be ready for the long-term battle. And so we may not be able to fix the 2020 election, but you darn right, we learned a lot, and we are gonna be there engaged to make sure that we check all of the checklists to make sure that we have election judges, that we are analyzing the data to look for the PO boxes, that we are holding our elected officials accountable, that we are looking to the county commissioners to do their actual job, that we are asking our county auditors whether they're elected or appointed, and we're asking for oversight by the commissioners to make sure that we have government at high expectations, no more minimum standards.
Well, but even the narrative, the reality is about Secretary Simon and those guys talk about that, well, there's no fraud.
Right.
Well, we're going to prove that where it is. And I think the comfort of the caucus, of the canvassing that's going on is you're going to find counties that are doing a great job.
Yep.
Great. That's going to bring a level of comfort, so then we can focus our resources on those that are less than truthful and less than transparent. So, Rick, one more question?
You're talking about the small rooms you go into now. When I went 5 years ago, caucus, we went, I believe it was townships.
Yep, it can
So
be.
you're not gonna be amongst people you don't know. You're gonna recognize the people in your room. You're gonna actually be there with your neighbor that came.
It depends on, you'll be, whether you all meet in a consolidated place, like Sandy County, which is nice for me as a candidate, meets at the Cambridge High School, but you'll all disperse into your own precinct based on your voting precinct. So you're there with your neighbors and friends and family. Others, Chisago and I think a lot of others actually do it regionally. So right in the physical precinct, they find a meeting location, because some of the counties are large, and I think that is typically would draw greater participation because it's really right in your backyard. You don't have a 25, 30, or 50-minute drive to get to the caucus. So.